Audio check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Audio check. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Audio check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Check, check, check. Audio check. Testing. Audio check. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Audio check. Audio check. check 1 2 3 4. Audio 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Audio test 1 2 3 4. Audio check 1 2 3 4. Audio check 1 2 3 4. Check check. Audio 1 2 3 4.
Let's all take our seats. We're going to start. Good morning and welcome, everyone. I call to order the February 23rd, 2018 meeting of the Contractors State License Board Enforcement Committee. My name is Ed Lang, and I'm the Enforcement Committee Chair. Board Member Johnny Simpson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand. Ready? Begin.
Pledge allegiance to the United States of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Our board members who are of the committee may sit at the table. Other board members who are in attendance must observe from the audience. If a quorum of the board is present, those members who are observing cannot participate in the discussion. Next, we'd like to invite everyone at the table to introduce themselves. Starting my left, I'm sorry. Yes.
Becky Lake, Enforcement Analyst.
Christy Shields, Counsel for the Board.
Tanya Corcoran, Chief Deputy Registrar.
Johnny Simpson, Board Member.
Dave Diaz, Board Member.
Jesse Flores, Deputy Chief Enforcement.
Ed Lang, Board Member.
Marla Richardson, Board Member.
David Foe, Registrar.
Nancy Springer, Board Member.
Pastor Herrera, Board Member.
Frank Shutter, Board Member.
Laura Zuniga, Chief of Licensing.
Mike Janevsky, Chief of Legislation.
Very good. Becky, at this time, will you call roll, please?
Ed Lang,
Here.
David Diaz.
Here.
Pastor Herrera.
Here.
Marla Richardson.
Here, sorry.
Johnny Simpson.
Here.
Frank Shutter.
Here.
Nancy Springer.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. I'm pleased to commend, at the beginning, I'm pleased to commend the progress of the enforcement leadership and continuing to fill position in the division. Brian Melton was selected as Enforcement Supervisor, E1. Is Brian here today? Would you stand while I read this? Brian started with the CSLB Enforcement Division 10 years ago as an Enforcement Representative 1, ER1. And in 2011 was promoted to Enforcement Rep 2, that's ER2. As an ER2, Brian worked in both the Investigative Center, IC, and Sacramento Case Management Enforcement Service Division. Thank you for your service. Thank you. All right. Next, Anna Rodriguez. You stand, please. Anna also brings over 10 years of CSLB experience as Enforcement Supervisor 1 to the Sacramento Intake and Mediation Center. Anna started with CSLB in 2007 as an office technician in the testing unit and promoted to Enforcement Analyst for the Chief of Enforcement in 2009, and in that position, she gained extensive knowledge about all units within the division. In 2014, Anna was promoted to an ER2 position in the Sacramento North IC. For the last 15 months, Anna has been the Staff Service Manager 1 in charge of business services within the CSLB Administrative Service. Thank you. Let's give them both a hand, please. Thank you. Both Brian and Anna started their new position in February and has been warmly welcomed by their employees and colleagues. Has entered the committee to have a discussion on this item? Hearing and seeing none, is there a public comment? If not, we move into public comment. We're now on agenda item C in your packet. This item is provided for public comments pertaining to items on the agenda as well as items not on the agenda. However, the committee cannot take any action on the item not listed on the agenda. The CSLB welcome comments on any of the agenda, on any items on the agenda, and it is the CSLB intent to ask for public comment prior to the committee taking action on any item in the agenda. But If some reason we forget to ask the public comments on the agenda item, a member of the public desiring to comment on an item should raise their hand and they will be recognized. Also allow the committee sufficient time to conduct its scheduled business. We are limiting all your comments to 5 minutes. Now, are there individuals in the audience that like to speak at this time? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, we move on to action item D. And that's under your enforcement program update. At this time, Jesse will share some highlights of the enforcement program update.
Thank you, Ed. Good morning.
Good morning.
On page 11, I want to mention that Adam Rivas has been on our radar since 2014. With the persistence of our San Francisco peace officer, filed a criminal case in that county, was able to put on record Mr. Rivas' warrant, which in Oregon, where he was arrested, brought it to our attention, and we extradited him to California, and now as mentioned in the highlight that he's serving time. On the bottom of page 11, just an update on Mr. Adon Torres. He was arrested on February 5th and faces 10 felonies and 15 misdemeanor charges. That case was actually worked in our San Diego office. I know it says Norwalk, but it was in our San Diego office. Moving on to page 13, Mr. Smelyansky was a qualifier in our license until he disassociated. He continued to act like a contractor and took advantage of one of our elderly citizens. With the help of our industry expert program, we were able to determine the work he performed had little value and as a result has to pay full restitution to the consumer. On page 15, I want to talk about our vacancies. You'll see our list of our vacancies there. You'll notice that 7 candidates have been offered positions, with some having start dates and others going through the normal routine approval process. We've had some challenges with recruiting staff, so we're working with our personnel department to start attending some colleges and job fairs to increase our candidate pool. On page 16 and 17, those are our complaint handling statistics. You'll see data related to completion of cycle times and complaints. There's no doubt the recruiting issues and redirecting of staff to the local assistance centers have impacted our overall caseload. However, staff were still able to meet board goals of completing 10 investigations and per month and keeping our age cases under 100. Also notable on page 16 is our efforts in collecting $19 million for consumers in restitution. On page 19, the chart just shows you that the actions taken against our most egregious contractors or violators, and that 29% of those were referred to criminal action. That's all I have for the update. Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you, Jesse. Are there any questions from the committee? Yes.
Yeah, just where was Atlas Construction Development? What part of the state were they operating in?
Which one? I'm sorry.
Page 13. Atlas Construction Development at the bottom there.
Oh,
Goodfellas.
good.
Is Southern Cal? It didn't mention.
I don't recall where it was located.
Okay. All right.
But I'll get back to you on that
I
before I
would
let you
just-
know
I
what
thought
county
the-
was.
I believe it's an LA County
LA
case.
County, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I just thought that,
Thanks, Christie.
what they were doing was so egregious. I just thought, I wanted to know what area of the state they were operating in. Well, thank you anyway.
Any other committee comments? Yes, go ahead.
Jesse, I just want to make sure we didn't forget about Matthew while you were talking about the vacancies, since we were
Oh, okay,
addressing that.
thank you, Marlo. We hired a peace officer in our Norwalk, out of our San Bernardino SIU unit, and Marla was gracious enough to go down there and swear him in yesterday. So now we have a new peace officer working our San Bernardino office, and in Riverside and San Bernardino, we have great relationships with them, and they take many of our cases and really work well with the CSLB. So thank you, Marlo, for going down there, and we look forward to Matt becoming a successful peace officer. Thank you.
Great, thanks for the teamwork. Any more committee comments before we go to the public? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Any public comment on this item, on this section? If not, let's go to agenda item E, update and discussion regarding staffing resources for 2017 and 18 disaster response. Jesse, will you please do that?
Yes, sir. Beginning on page 23, you'll see that over 40 staff were redirected to respond to wildfire and disaster areas in 8 different counties. Over 3,000 hours were spent staffing the assistance centers alone, and not counting drive time. Some staff drove over 3 hours to get to these centers. We also had proactive enforcement staff with boots on the ground, posting signs in disaster areas. On page 23 also, you will see the information relating to an undercover sting operation conducted by Northern Swift staff on January 27th of 2018. It proved to be very effective in Sonoma County that identified 12 suspects, 10 of whom are suspected of committing felony. Contract and license referrals have been made to the Sonoma County DA's office. On page 24, you will see information regarding staff partnering with other state agencies and local DA investigators to conduct sweeps. Every week, staff conduct sweeps, taking them to burn areas of Lake and Mendocino County on one day, then hitting Napa the next day. There has been very little activity reported in these counties as of this time. We also have a dedicated ER who conducts sweeps in Sonoma and Santa Rosa each week that has reported to produce some results in that area. It is suspected that unlicensed activity is being conducted on Saturdays. So we had him go out on a Saturday, and which resulted in 3 7028 filings, which 2 of them included workers' comp violations. Also on page 24, you'll see information relating to concerns regarding hazardous substance certification requirements. The CSLB jurisdiction is limited to physical site that is listed pursuant to the Health and Safety Code, or any site that is listed as a hazardous substance release site as determined by Department of Toxic Substances Control. Some tongue twisters here. Or any site listed on the national priorities list, or if an underground storage tank is being installed or removed. If not under this umbrella, these concerns should be reported to OES and federal EPA to address, as they are lead agencies for this matter. The impact this has on page 25 is you will see that staff have been redirected for a total of 90 work weeks. As reported previously, we continue to monitor the impact of production in age cases because it can have an effect on meeting our goals and objectives. That's all I have for this update.
Thank you, Jesse. Excellent reporting. Any committee reports? Okay, yes.
Yeah, I would like to start out by saying that thank you to staff for being out there. Boots on the ground really makes a difference. Being from Butte County, where we were dealing with the disasters firsthand, we do appreciate that assistance and having them out there, so thank you for that. My question is, and I apologize if maybe this has been brought up and I'm not aware, but you're talking about staff being redirected. Is there any kind of a plan you have for when there is a disaster to fill that? Like, do we consider people who retired that maybe you can give a call and they can come in and help with that? Or is there any kind of a plan that you've considered?
I believe we've talked about that in the past, but because disasters are sporadic and we never know when they're going to happen. So, I mean, we have talked about retired annuitants handling that for us, yes. So, yes, we've talked about it all the time, and, not to the next disaster do we come back and try to brainstorm about how we best serve the public.
Any other committee comments? Okay, what about public comments on the report? Yes, come forward, please, to the mic.
My name's Corey Albritton. I'm a field representative for the Foundation for Fair Contracting. I cover the Solano, Sonoma, Napa, Lake, Mendocino, and Del Norte counties. I'd first like to thank the CSLB for facilitating this meeting and for all their enforcement efforts and the progress made here today. We've been working closely with the SWIFT investigator with the CSLB, and we filed numerous complaints in regards to license violations in the Sonoma and Napa County fires, and would appreciate a status update on these complaints. We realize the area is very large and catching every bad actor out there is difficult. So maybe we can connect after the meeting and discuss how we can continue the enforcement in these areas and see where we can stand with the previous complaints filed. Thank you.
Okay, would you get with Jesse when you finish?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
good. Thank you.
very good. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Please come forward.
Hi, good morning. Maria Garcia here on behalf of the California Landscape Contractors Association. I want to thank the CSLB for the efforts you are doing to combat underground economy efforts, and wanted to make you aware, and I know David already is, that we are working, the California Landscape Contractors Association are working with a larger coalition, including the Council of Laborers, the General Contractors Association, in the legislature to try to get more funding for the CSLB, given sparse resources, not just in Northern California, but those in Southern California. And the focus of the funding would be more of a public outreach campaign to help those consumers be aware and vigilant themselves of how to identify fraud, how to look up the CSLB website and find the contractor's number. So to the extent the CSLB is really able to support the effort for the legislature, you guys are constantly letting them know that we need more resources, but I wanted to make sure you guys heard that from us as well. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for your comments.
Good morning, Board.
Good morning.
My name's Lee Howard, and I am a representative of North Coast Builders Exchange out of Lake, Mendocino, and Sonoma counties. We have roughly 1,200 members in our association. I'm also, just so you know, I'm a licensed contractor. 280-777. This gray hair tells the story. I just have to drive over here today. It was a nice drive this morning, 4 hours over and 4 hours back. So,
wow.
But I hear what you're saying about enforcement, and I've had lengthy discussions with Dave, and I can tell you we've worked pretty good together. But the reality is at least in Mendocino County, you're not there. I know you try, you do what you can do, but I don't think, and you can prove me wrong, but I don't think anybody's been into Mendocino County from this license board since October. Eric Steffen came and made 3 citations there in that period of time. I know you can't cover it all, but we've got some problems, some real problems, and you've alluded to a couple of them, and Dave's also set up some working groups, and we've worked through some of them. But this notion that hazmat is somewhat ambiguous is definitely the truth. We have contractors over there, and let me just tell you, there's 3 majors in this thing. ECC, Asbret, and Cirrus are the 3 major contractors that are working and have hired on with the Corps, either the Corps or OES at the state. They're doing the cleanup. We have tried to get lists of contractors that work for them, been denied every time under public records, freedom of information, or anywhere we go. We know for a fact that we have people working for those, and all 3 of them are licensed. We know for a fact that there's contractors working for them that are from out of state and don't have any license. That's the worst. It gets better after that because we have contractors that are A license with no hazmat, A license with hazmat, B licenses with no hazmat, and it goes through the whole gamut. I'm hoping that working with Dave, that we'll be able to define the perimeters of this whole thing and what is there. We disagree with you on what's hazmat. The state came along and said, this is hazmat under health and safety code, and we can give you the sections. But that doesn't seem to cut the mustard, because you're not requiring that the people working on those jobs have a hazmat certificate. And
Sir,
without that,
Sir, you have 1 minute. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Without that, we're going to continue to spin our wheels. This will not be the last cleanup that we have in the state like this, but I'm hoping that, and I'm praying, that we can get an act together. We were in the 2015 fires. We didn't learn much there. I'm hoping we learn something here. And we're willing at North Coast Builders Exchange to work with you guys and try to make it better and try to make it so the contractor can understand it.
Very good. Thank you, sir, for your report. Yes, Dave?
I just want to thank Lee Howard for his comments, and also I hope you're able to participate in another work group meeting. I think it's for March the 5th. And Corey, Corey, you too. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any more public comment? If not, we'll go to agenda item F, update discussion regarding the solar task force. Jesse, would you take care of that?
Sure. On page 29, you will see that Solar Task Force has identified 4 different types of agreements that homeowners are entering into. Each have unique characteristics that determine the way they are investigated. For example, the lease, our complaints regarding the lease involve unlicensed contracting, aiding and abetting, and unregistered salespersons. Our PPAs, our complaints are revealing that there's misrepresentation by unregistered salespeople. More was being paid per kilowatt than they could have gotten from their local utility. Private funding, our complaints found workmanship issues and system not producing what was promised. And then our green funding, our complaints found misrepresentation, unregistered salesperson, lack of clarity in the financing. Some lost homes because they couldn't afford the monthly payments. These typically targeted the elderly and the people who speak English as a second language. On page 30, you'll see that our calendar year of 2017, we received 792 solar-related complaints that resulted in over $844,000 in restitution to consumers. 24 complaints were forwarded for further disciplinary action, and 2 were criminally filed. The initial goal of the Solar Task Force was to ultimately decrease the number of complaints received, and while the number of residents PV systems installed in California has decreased by 23% per the California Distributed General Statistics website, the number of consumer complaints we received has increased by 83%. While we are not completely sure why, it may be the consumers don't complain until a year or longer after, when they see they're not getting what they thought they were going to get when they had the system initially installed. Upon further analysis, we found 33 contractors make up 43% of our complaints. We continue to work with CalCIA and other organizations to see if we can educate consumers and change the business practice in the solar industry. I'll summarize. The complaints stem from homeowners' underlying feeling that they have been misled. This often leads to additional findings of poor workmanship, abandonment, unregistered salespeople, and/or contract violations. Also on page 30, you will see information that we continue to focus on conducting meetings with the top 33 contractors who are receiving complaints. Our aim is to assist the contractors with the development of improved business practice that comply with CSLB laws, rules, and regulations. We recently held a conference call with the Los Angeles County Director of Department of Consumer and Business Affairs to discuss approximately 50 complaints they have received against solar contractors. We took possession of those complaints, and then we're getting reviewed and getting ready to assign them to investigators for investigation. We established a partnership with the Federal Trade Commission to investigate and address contractors who target a protected class of ethnic background and elderly people through high-pressure sales tactics. A member of our Solar Task Force conducted an undercover sting operation on February 13th with CSLB targeting a company where it was believed that the revoked licensee was operating in the shadows of a newly formed company. We anticipate getting the findings of those by the board meeting in June, so that's still under investigation. Now I'd like to refer to Mike Jaminski to ask that he describe briefly the recently enacted legislation that affects the solar industry.
Yes, the description on the bottom of page 31, the top of page 32 does a pretty good job of summing up the two bills that were effective January 1st of this year. And for more information about the implementation of these provisions and how they directly affect CSLB, that will be an agenda item on next Friday at the Legislative Committee meeting for both AB 1070 and AB 1284. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Some action items for the Solar Task Force. The goal is to bring the Solar Task Force conclusion by June this year. In preparation for the dissolution of the Solar Task Force, staff had planned exploring the following: develop solar-specific training for staff in each office, create a corrective action plan for the 33 contractors who have 5 or more complaints, design a program to identify unregistered solar HIS for investigation, complete the investigations related to the FTC, partner with public affairs to publish on the CSLB website the minimum requirements for a solar contract to comply with the requirements AB 1070. Begin creating an interactive online training for solar contractors in HIS. That concludes my solar update. Any questions?
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chair and Jesse, on your page 32 on the action items, I thank you for sharing those with us, and I think it's really in the right direction of how you want to deal with this. I don't know if you've had discussion or maybe seen the feasibility of maybe either having a solar hotline or maybe a solar email that consumers might be able to direct questions. With your introductory background statement, you have about approximately 16,000 systems were installed monthly in the state. I mean, can you imagine? I'm sure many of these folks thinking about that really are looking for places to go for additional information. I know, Public Affairs and has on their website, the link now to that information. But maybe you might want to consider the feasibility of maybe bringing in some part-time annuitants or someone to kind of staff this, or, you have 7 staff members there. Maybe that might be an additional thing that you may want to consider.
We're hoping that the new legislation, and if you had a chance to read it, it will, when someone's entering in a solar agreement, is really in nuts and bolts and basic plain language what a consumer is going to see. So hopefully that will spark their interest when they get somebody at their house to go to our website and maybe get more information. So I think we're doing all we can. I think your idea is great if we have a hotline or email. Our website, I think, is very user-friendly, and I think it'll have that kind of information for consumers if they go to our website. So.
Yeah, and maybe that might be something you might want to consider with the IT people is right there where you have the solar information link, also have an email address, or if you decide to have a call center or a hotline number, be able to call that number right then after you in addition to the information that you have. Because the information that you have does give you some information on, cost and, how you can calculate your kilowatts and all that stuff. But it doesn't say, well, if you have a complaint, who do you contact? So that might be something you may want to look at also.
Okay.
But, good luck, and I think this is really an issue that I'm glad to see that the board has really kind of zeroed in on, because it is an issue impacting a lot of consumers out there.
Thank you, Pastor.
Very good. Any other committee comments?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Jesse, I would like to suggest that you get with Rick and also Soledad from Norwalk. She had some really good ideas on basically the consumer outreach. Having things posted on the website and having an email address is great, but it's only as good as the people that know how to get there or know that it exists. And we discussed some flyers and posters to maybe go into different law enforcement places or police departments, because what generally happens is someone is wronged or they feel as though there was some criminal activity. They report it to the police and they're told that, oh, that's a civil matter, because they don't know who to refer them to. So I think in order to get people to contact you via the email address or website. You've got to get to where those complaints are initiating.
Yes, I've talked to Soledad about that too. Thank you. I will do that.
Excellent feedback. Thank you. Any more comments from the committee? Any comments from the public? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I would just state, in addition to everything that was just discussed, that the provision, the AB 1070 for the solar disclosure has an explicit provision that, among other things, CSLB's contact information as a resource for complaints, as well as website, phone numbers, all that is going to be printed in boldface 16-point font within the solar disclosure document. So it'll be an additional resource.
Excellent. I know the committee will be looking to see how it comes out. Thank you very much. Yes, please come up to the mic, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Bernadette Del Chiaro. I'm the Executive Director of the California Solar and Storage Association, formerly CalSIA. I'll address the name change in the next committee meeting section. I just want to comment on the Solar Task Force. First off, I just want to compliment the work you guys do. As the association, we really stand in backing of the mission of the CSLB. It's critically important that we keep protecting our consumers. I say this time and again before this group of people, but our industry is completely dependent on consumers opting into our product. It's a voluntary adoption of clean energy solutions, and therefore having consumers protected and having good experience out there in our communities across the state is of critical importance to us. We were strongly in support of both AB 1070 as well as AB 1284 to address PACE financing disclosures as well. And we really look forward to working with Michael and appreciate all of Laura's help in crafting that legislation and to get to this disclosure document that Michael was referring to. I think it's going to actually go a long way. We've had voluntary disclosure forms for the industry to use, but this bill actually makes disclosure forms mandatory, and we'll work to craft it. I think our goals being the same of making sure that's really simple, plain information, but exactly the information the consumer needs to make an informed decision and know what they're doing. And that should get at a lot of the problems. I do want to mention, which has been said in other Solar Task Force meetings and whatnot, and is somewhat referenced in the summary for today's presentation, but that we have seen a growth in solar adoption in California, and so the growth in complaints somewhat tracks with that growth. That said, I think if I do the right math, it's less than 0.5% of the solar systems going in are resulting in complaints. That's, again, not to undermine the importance of addressing and reducing the number of complaints. And again, we really appreciate the prioritization that the CSLB is putting on this. But I just want to make sure that that context of, I think overall we're doing a pretty good job out there. We got to make sure that we bring up the bottom and protect folks and make sure that they know what they're getting into. I have a couple questions really quickly, and I'm just wondering if in your assessment of the growth in complaints, if you guys have had a chance to take a look at when the contract was signed and do an analysis of, are we seeing complaints filed in 2017? Were they for contracts signed in 17 or 16 or 15? How much of a lag time is there? I'm curious of that breakdown. In part because I think it would help inform the conversation of, are we actually getting better in terms of the practices out there, and we're just seeing a lag time in the complaints, or vice versa. So I would ask that you guys do that analysis if that's possible. I'm curious if any of the complaints that you highlighted included energy storage systems, or were they just solar? I don't know if you guys have an answer for that. And then if I read the summary correctly, it looks like there's somewhat of an equal problem between C10 and C46 contractors, and just wanted to get clarification of that. Great. So I think that is the extent of my, I just want to reiterate the goal. We fully appreciate the goals of the task force laid out in the notes, and really remain here to work with you, bringing the industry together for those meetings, those informationals, doing webinars together, et cetera. So we stand at the ready to support your work. Thank you.
Very good. Yes, thank you. Do we have a question from?
There's been a lot of talk at the federal level about the new tariffs on solar panels. What do you see as the impact on your industry on that, and whether it's going to increase the installation of these new systems, or what the impact might be for you?
It's a really good question. So for those who don't know, the Trump administration recently made a decision to basically put in place a tariff on imported modules. This would be just the module portion of a solar system. So a solar system has lots of different components to it: the inverter, the wires, the mounting and racking, increasingly the storage system paired with it. The tariff is just on the modules themselves. We anticipate it will have some upward effect. It's already, in fact, the increase in price actually started with just the announcement of the trade case, as people anticipated that. So we've already kind of weathered, we think, probably the worst of that storm. Really kind of what affects California's solar market is state-level policy decisions, frankly, and of which we actually sort of weathered quite a bit of those decisions. Changes in rate structure, for example, that the PUC oversees those decisions as proposed by the investor-owned utilities. That really has much more of a bigger impact on the affordability of solar for a consumer. It's noteworthy to mention, even before the trade case hit California or the rest of the U.S. market, we saw in California a 13% overall drop in solar installations.
Excuse me, your time is up there.
We can talk about it offline.
Thank you. It's very interesting, though. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Moving right along. No more audience comments? Okay. Let's go to agenda item G. Okay. Agenda item G, update discussion and possible action on recommendation from Board Member Advisory Subcommittee on workers' compensation enforcement strategies, resources, and accomplishments. Okay. As one of the members of the Advisory Council assigned to address workers' compensation enforcement strategies, I would like to provide an update of our activities. On January 25th, 2018, Board Chair Kevin Albanese, Registrar David Folk, and Chief of Enforcement Mickey Vickery, and I met with the State Compensation Insurance Fund, known as SCIF. The purpose of our meeting was to discuss different strategies to address the avoidance of workers' compensation insurance. The meeting was very positive, and SCIF absolutely wants to work with us on this. Currently, roofing contractors, Class C39, are the only classification required to have workers' compensation insurance in all areas. And we have found many roofing contractors go to SCIF for that insurance. We and SCIF anticipate that most other contractors will go to SCIF if workers' compensation policies are made mandatory for all classification. We want to ensure that this will benefit all contractors and not harm SCIF. We have devised a plan of action to increase workers' compensation compliance using both new and existing strategies. I'd like to summarize a few of our action steps. We will continue to collaborate closely with other state agencies, as listed on page 34 of your packet. As noted on page 35, we also continue to share CSLB workers' compensation data with interested parties. We will be including information regarding the Workers' Compensation Advisory Committee in the next California Licensed Contractors newsletter. We will be requesting a Joint Enforcement Strike Force Subcommittee meeting to discuss information sharing opportunities. We will provide feedback to SCIF as it relates to auditing process. We will continue to build on the successful workers' compensation suspension program used in our intake and mediation centers. Under this program, licensees who admit to having workers employed with an exemption on file have their exemption canceled, and they receive an intent to suspend letter. To avoid suspension, they must either obtain an insurance policy or file a new exemption. Through this program, almost 300 new policies were obtained by licensees. We plan to further enhance this program by issuing a letter of admonishment when a licensee is subject to the workers' compensation suspension program. We're also planning to consider some legislative proposals as shown on the bottom of page 35. These proposals include rescinding and mandatory audit provision for C-39 roofing contractors in the insurance code, and adding a workers' compensation requirement for a limited number of licensees. We also intend to submit a proposal that would prohibit licensees from filing a new workers' compensation exemption for a period of 1 year if they have been found to have violated Labor Code 3700, employing workers without a workers' compensation insurance policy. The Workers' Compensation Advisory Committee will be discussing these legislative proposals with CSLB staff and stakeholders in the near future. Additional information will be provided in the April board meeting. As of this point, are there any comments from the committee? Yes, okay.
Yeah, if I could just clarify, I think what you're recommending is that the ledge proposals would be presented to the board with a possible recommendation that they forward those to the ledge committee?
Yes, that's correct.
For vetting, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other?
I have a question, Ed.
Yes, sure.
Was there, in your discussions, was there any discussion of having all contractors required to have workers' compensation insurance? Or is this, or are you just trying to target certain classifications?
Just target a few at the beginning, because we don't know where this is going to lead to once we continue our conversation. That was only first meeting. So unless David has some prior meeting. David?
No, if I could just comment on that, though. The concern that State Compensation Insurance Fund has is that with the roofer mandatory requirement as it currently exists, with a mandatory audit component to it, that they're not able to recover the amount of money they're spending to provide these policies. And so until we address different strategies to make sure that those that have a workers' comp policy are reporting accurate payroll, it would be very difficult for them to absorb more than a certain number of new licensees. So we're trying to look at the whole issue. I think ultimately, though, the goal would be that classifications that are likely to have workers would be required to have a policy.
As follow up on that, it seems that every contractor that has workers' comp insurance is subject to an audit. I don't know if are you saying that the roofers are mandatory every year?
Yes, the legislation that required all roofers have a workers' comp policy, make it mandatory. And we're going to be meeting with State Fund and other interested parties to look at how they're doing these audits, because their audits haven't been as successful as they would have hoped. They're spending a lot of money conducting audits, and there's very little return on that investment.
Yeah. Any other community comments? Yes, go ahead.
Just, this is the first time I learned about this mandatory audit provision. It just seems like, I don't know what the cost is, but I think it's a good thing to look at that provision and to see if maybe that's a impediment for some of these contractors to really get the workers' comp coverage, I mean, it's a big cost. I mean, what do they audit? Self-audits, or how does that work?
Well, I know some of you here have been through audits, and it kind of depends on the business, but what we learned is that many of these contractors, these roofers that got a policy, or small contractors, they're going out to somebody's garage to do an audit, and they're seeing the paperwork they want to provide to them. So we have to look for, though, are looking for ways to identify the cheaters, those that are engaged in what we call premium insurance fraud. And to do that, we're going to have a meeting, and it's going to be probably March the 6th, as we're looking at right now. And we're bringing the Department of Insurance, bringing experts. With Mark Connerly is with us today. Maybe some of his members can also help us to look at the audit procedures they're using, so that they can identify those that likely have a lot of employees and aren't reporting any payroll. Because the one thing you want to keep in mind is that State Fund is the insurer of last resort. So what they do is they issue a workers' comp policy where they're almost mandated to do that, and if they don't report any payroll, they've issued a workers' comp policy the contractor's not reporting any payroll to pay any premium on it, and it can cause all of the rates for the roofers to raise. So we have to address that issue.
Yeah.
And I know we're not in the public comment period yet, but if now is the appropriate time to weigh in.
Any other committee report first? Okay. Now we're in public comments. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mark Connerly, Executive Director of the Roofing Contractors Association of California. And I guess first to address this issue of the audit and the cost, we built into the bill that was signed into law a provision that the cost of the audit will be borne by the policy holder. So I'm confused as to why state fund still claims hardship or some financial impact on them, because the cost is supposed to be passed along to the policyholder.
If I could just comment on that, that's correct. The problem, though, is if they don't pay it and they just go get insurance elsewhere, then state fund doesn't recover that cost. So that is something that we would ask the Ledge Committee to consider, is whether or not we could use our letter of admonishment with the, we get a little bit into the details here, but to somehow leverage our enforcement with the Workers' Compensation Insurance Rating Bureau, the statistical agent for the Department of Insurance, to be able to identify contractors that went through an audit and didn't pay for the audit cost and for the assessment, so that other insurers would know about that. So that would be something that we would want to vet through our legislative committee.
Okay. And that's good information to know. I can see that perspective, but most of these roofers who are being audited, you referred to somebody who's working out of their garage, for example, they don't have a choice. That other insurers typically have a minimum premium that they will write, and that minimum premium is usually something on the order of $100,000 or more. So state funds should have a pretty heavy hammer there. I don't know that most of the roofers that are small like that would have another insurance option. So I think that's something to consider. Certainly, we're open to whatever can be done to clean it up and help resolve this, but it's still ringing a little bit hollow to me that state funds claiming these guys are going elsewhere, because I don't think there are other insurance alternatives for some of the small guys. So that would be my first comment in response to that specific issue. And then I heard that there's consideration of a legislative proposal to rescind what we've put in place, and obviously that caught my attention. Am I hearing that it would just be expanding it in another section of the insurance code to require, to mandate workers' comp for several different trades? And you're not looking to get rid of what we've already done, are you?
No, what we're looking to do is have you with the seat at the table where we discuss this.
Okay.
State fund's concern is that they're losing money on the roofing policies, and that would be something you may want to bring up with them. That's just what we heard. And so when we talk about requiring other classifications to have a policy, they don't want to lose money with those policies as well. So we need to just look at all of these different issues. They like the idea of doing the audits, but they want to have them more focused, and they want to be able to get a return on investment. That's really what's key here. So how can we help them to make that happen? And they're willing to be at the meeting. So some of your comments you could absolutely bring up with them, and they could explain that. We just went to that meeting with, our focus was on seeing if they would be receptive to having maybe all of the classifications require workers' comp. And it was kind of interesting. They insure approximately 110,000 businesses today. And so we're at this meeting asking them if they could take on another maybe 150,000 businesses. That's a lot. And based on what's happening with the roofers, they were not receptive to that. They couldn't absorb that if they lose money on those policies. So we have to figure out a way to make it work for all of us. So hopefully you can be at that meeting and have some of your members present.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Any other comments? Okay. This is a motion. I'd like to present a motion to present the workers' compensation future package, future strategies to the full board and the Ledge Committee for approval. And that's what this is all about. I need a second.
So moved.
It's been properly moved in second. Are there any comments from the committee? Any from the public? Becky, will you call the roll, please?
Ed Lang,
Yes.
David Diaz,
Yes.
Pastor Herrera,
Aye.
Marlo Richardson,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Frank Schetter,
Yes.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you for that and the discussion that came out of that. Let's go to agenda item H. And that's the update, discussion, and possible action on recommendation for Board Member Advisory Subcommittee on strategies to address owner-builder construction permits and unlicensed activity violations. Board Member Nancy Springer and Board Member Linda Clifford, as a member of the advisory committee, formed to address issues with building permit compliance, have been working diligently with staff on the implementation of a timely strategies. At this time, I'd like to turn the discussion over to Nancy.
Thank you, Ed. First, I'd like to make a note, a correction on page 39. The first bullet point in the agenda there, the statement says, "Develop procedures that require contractors." The "require" should state "allows." So just that quick correction there. At the September 17th board meeting, Board Member Linda Clifford and myself were appointed as the two-person advisory committee to explore options to increase contractor compliance with building permit requirements. So on January 10th, Linda, myself, staff, we met, we had a meeting, and we developed strategies that are included on page 38. So I'd like to provide the committee with a brief update regarding these strategies. So I'm pleased to report that the board had previously approved to allow the CSLB building official collaboration letter to be able to go out. So what we did is we submitted that to Calbo. We have a representative here from Calbo, and I'd like to thank Calbo for having that go out through email. So that letter went out February 7th to more than 400 different building departments. The letter identifies a CSLB liaison, Jesse Flores, as the contact there, and he's already received 6 inquiries to that. So what it is it's partner in building departments with CSLB investigators. It provides that direct contact to those managers and to staff. Also, if they're not available, then management, they can contact management, and those people will include the Enforcement Chief, Missy Vickery, Deputy Enforcement Chief Jesse Flores, Chief Deputy Registrar Tanya Cochran, and Registrar David Vogt. These contacts can be utilized in the event that the liaison is unreachable. And while we have enjoyed success, CSLB has enjoyed success with the new building department referral form, having over 1,200 cases currently. They did come up with a new email address to report permit violations that has been implemented, and you can find this under the 4th bullet on page 38. In addition to develop sharing of information protocol between Calbo and the CSLB Chief of Legislation, Mike Jemensky, is taking the lead in developing operational agreements between CSLB and the collaborating building departments. And save the best for last here, and that is January 1st of this year, CSLB obtained authority to issue a letter of admonishment that provides for public disclosure of a violation of 1 year and the authority for staff to require the contractor provide a corrective plan so violations are not repeated. So Linda and I are proposing that CSLB use the letter of admonishment to require contractors to complete a course on permit compliance. Because we are not aware of a suitable permit course, Linda and I are proposing the following. So we have an outline for permit violator training. Some key things will be that this will be an online interactive training course. We have a permit course outline. We're going to be using our resource with CALBO, which is the California Building Official Group, to get feedback. And basically, it's surrounded around when do I need to come in and get a permit and why the need for the permit. The next steps will be to conduct a workshop in collaboration with our partnership with CALBO and the licensing committee that they have established. We'll seek some subject matter experts for the course development. So that's the end of my report to the committee.
Thank you, Nancy, for that fine report. The committee report, yes, go ahead.
Nancy, did you guys, during your meeting, discuss any way of maybe tracking different mechanical or whatever devices that, no matter what, trigger a permit, like HVAC systems or water heaters? All of those are required to have a permit pulled to install, but I can go down to Home Depot or wherever and buy a water heater and put it in myself. So, I mean, was that ever discussed, and maybe need some legislation on it or anything like that?
That specific item had not been discussed in our meeting.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you discuss any alternative permit strategies? Like, I know they had, one time there was discussion in Sacramento about having a sort of a minor permit, the permit process where somebody could actually get a permit online or pay a fee and for a contractor to have like stamps or something that they could mail in that said, you know, I did a surface job or because there's a lot of, we know there's a lot of work, service work, especially it's not permitted, that ends up being a little bit larger than just, you know, in my case, changing a light switch or something like that. So I was wondering if any of those strategies were discussed.
We didn't talk about that. We didn't discuss those strategies, though we can refer that forward of ways to help address that situation, so I can bring that forward.
Go ahead.
Okay, you need a motion to develop the course.
Yeah.
Before we have the motion, are there any, I guess all the comments are, yes.
Okay, so just to clarify that the course would be a voluntary option for submitting as part of a corrective action plan. If you're going to mandate it going forward and require people to complete it to demonstrate rehabilitation or remediation, then I'd suggest considering initiating rulemaking to make it a requirement that you could include as part of a corrective action plan.
Okay, yes, go ahead. Yes, please come to.
Hi, good morning. I'm Shane Diller. I'm a member of the Board of Directors for CalBO, the California Building Officials, and I'm the chair of their state licensing committee. I want to thank the subcommittee for their efforts, and Nancy, Board Member Springer, has been a very active board or member in CalBO for many years, and we're great that she continues to be a liaison and one of our representatives here on your board. We continue to stand ready to assist in enforcement efforts and in permitting streamlining efforts, both in the discussion that's already been occurring there and as new technology and new strategies and improvements for the customers, both on the consumer side and on the licensee side, become available. CalBO is regularly trying to educate and message those options to our membership so that you have between your relationship here and CalBO, have a ready-made and very efficient communication system to the building departments across the state. And so I just want to thank you for your efforts there and let you know that CalBO remains committed to being a good partner with the CSLB.
Thank you for your feedback and comments. I'd like to request a motion to present the 6 items addressing owner-builder construction permit and unlicensed activity violation to the full board for approval.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any comments from the committee? From the public? If not, Becky, would you roll call?
Ed Lang,
Yes.
David Diaz,
Yes.
Pastor Herrera,
Aye.
Marlo Richardson,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Frank Shetter,
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Excellent. So your items will be submitted to the board, full board. Thank you. Next, we have action item, agenda item I, strategic plan update. Jesse, will you go over that, please?
Sure, turn to page 43, you'll see our strategic plan for our enforcement objectives. 2.1, which is to formalize strategy to identify licensee misuse of workers' compensation insurance requirement exemption, has been changed. At the Enforcement Committee meeting on November 3rd of 2017, the committee meeting members unanimously agreed to change the target date for this item from March 2017 to June 2018. This item consists of working with the Public Affairs Office to develop an education and enforcement program targeted at licensees who employ workers while having workers' compensation on file with CSLB, and we are hopeful to move formal plan for this by June 2018. On 2.2, we are looking to reduce legal action expenditures while also not compromising consumer protection. We are hoping to have a lot of success with the letter of admonishment, which after January 1st, we now have the authority to issue. Item 2.5, which is to increase the C10 electrical license renewals by $20 to fund electrical certification enforcement, will be discussed further when the Legislative Committee meets on March 2nd of 2018. They will be making the necessary changes, which consists of simply changing the word from may to shall. That concludes this update.
Very good. Thank you, Jesse. Are there any comments from the committee on this report? Any public? Okay. I'd like to ask a motion to remand item, oh, sorry, yes.
Sorry, I wasn't fast enough. Richard Markison on item 2.5. I would hope that making that minor change might go into an omnibus bill or something that's in the legislature this year, so that would give you the authority to make that charging change or that additional fee early in 2019. Otherwise, if you wait until the next cycle, that would delay imposing that fee for some period of time.
Good, thank you. Now, hearing no other comments, I would like to make a motion to remand item 2.5 of the strategic plan to the Legislative Committee for possible statutory change to Business and Professional Code 7137K.
Second.
Okay. Are there any comments from the committee on that? For the public? Becky, would you get a roll call?
Ed Lang,
Yes.
David Diaz,
Yes.
Pastor Herrera,
Aye.
Marlo Richardson,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Frank Shetter,
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Aye.
Thank you. And this, I know it's a little long in areas, but we thank you for this conclude our enforcement section. And I'd like to motion to adjourn. Becky?
Ed Lang,
Yes.
David Diaz,
Yes.
Pastor Herrera,
Aye.
Marlo Richardson,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Frank Shetter, Nancy Springer.
Thank you, and meeting's adjourned. We will reconvene in 10 minutes for the licensing committee meeting. Thank you so much for coming.
Fees never going in on this bid.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. You know what?
They just got it.
Contractor State Licensing Board come to order. I am Marlo Richardson, the committee chair. Are we all here? Okay. Only board members who are members of the committee may sit at the table. Other board members who are in attendance must observe from the audience. If a quorum of the board is present, those members who are observing cannot participate in discussion. Do we have a quorum? Yes.
Can I call the roll?
Yes, roll, please.
Marla Richardson?
Here.
Dave Diaz?
Here.
Pastor Herrera?
Here.
Ed Lang?
Here.
Frank Shutter?
Here.
Johnny Simpson?
Here.
Nancy Springer?
Next, I would like to invite everyone to introduce themselves, beginning from my left.
Laura Zuniga, Chief of Licensing?
Dave Diaz, board member.
Johnny Simpson, board member.
Tanya Corcoran, Chief Deputy Registrar.
Christy Shields, counsel for the board.
Mike Janeski, Chief of Legislation.
Jesse Flores, Deputy Chief Enforcement.
Frank Shutter, board member.
Pastor Herrera, board member.
Nancy Springer, board member.
David Foat, Registrar.
Ed Lang, board member.
Again, Marlo Richardson, committee chair. There's one change to the package. Page 66 and 67 are duplicates, so we're going to disregard those two pages. Any comments from the board members?
You have copies of the corrected pages, I think, at your place, and then there's handouts in the back.
Okay, moving forward, I'm pleased to acknowledge the achievements of the licensing division in significantly reducing processing times and continuing to fill positions in the division. Public comment. This item is provided for public comment pertaining to items on the agenda as well as items not on the agenda. However, the committee cannot take any action on items on the agenda. The CSLB welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the CSLB's intent to ask for public comment prior to the committee's taking action on any agenda item. But if for some reason we forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item, a member of the public desiring to comment on the item should raise their hand and will be recognized. Also, to allow the committee sufficient time to conduct its scheduled business, we will be limiting public comments to 5 minutes per individuals. Are there any individuals that wish to address the committee at this time? Okay, seeing none, we will head over to our licensing program update, and I will pass it on to Laura Zuniga.
Thank you. This item begins on page 57 of the packet. So on this page, you have information on the number of applications we've received over the last year. We don't have the January numbers in here in the packet, but I did look at them before the meeting, and I just want to note that for original exam applications and original waiver applications in particular, we saw a significant increase. In January, we received 1,254 original exam apps, and for waiver applications, we received 736. The other categories were up as well, but those two were the most significant. In the chart below, you can see the applications received over the prior few calendar years. And then just to add that the 2017 number is approximately 38,600, so fairly comparable to 2016. Moving on, you can see on page 58 the number of applications processed per month, and then as well as the applications over the prior calendar years. Then we have information describing what process is, can involve several different steps in the application processing. On page 59, you can see a chart we added last year, the average weeks to initial processing by month for each of the different types of, for most of the different types of documents we receive in licensing. I do want to note in here, you can see in December, original exam applications was at approximately 8.5 weeks. I just want to thank the staff in licensing in exam applications and many other units as well. The staff worked really hard to bring down these times. Staff put in a lot of overtime. We had staff taking on additional responsibilities, and we're currently at 2 weeks for the processing of original exam applications. So I just want to thank everyone for their efforts there. It's been tremendous. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It doesn't show here. We also had a backlog of renewal applications, or maybe it doesn't show quite as high, and we're also able to bring that down to approximately 2 weeks. So thanks to our staff. And then on page 60, there's information about some of the main applications we receive, and then the total weeks by processing broken down by type of application. Then each step in the process, you can see the corrections and the time it takes to get it back for corrections and then to issuance. We continue to have approximately 50% of our applications we're not able to accept and need to be returned for correction, which delays the processing. On to page 61, just the chart, the disposition of applications by calendar year. Any questions so far? Okay. And then on to page 62, information on workers' compensation recertification. These numbers don't change significantly, so we have approximately 55% of our licensees with an exemption from workers' compensation on file. On page 63 is the chart by classification. This also stays fairly consistent, the information. Page 64, information about our criminal background unit. And then the chart with our statistics, as you can see, the number of denials based on the criminal background check continues to be quite low. On page 65, we have information on our experience verification unit. Our regulations require 3% of our applications to be randomly selected for a more comprehensive investigation of the experience. And you can see in here information over the last calendar year statistics. And then on to the next page, one of the replacement charts in here has broken down by classification. I did want to indicate at the December board meeting, there were some comments made that indicated the denial rate for applications that go through EVU, Experience Verification Unit, is 50%, and that's not the case. It's typically between 20 to 22%, and that percentage has been fairly consistent over at least the last 10 years. Any questions there? And then on the next page is information on the Licensing Information Center. As you can see, the Licensing Information Center, they did a great job as well last year in bringing down our call wait times, and it's continuing to stay low. And then finally, on page 68 and 69, information on our judgment unit and with details about the monetary savings to the public. Any questions?
Nancy, you had a comment?
Speaking of turn that, I just wanted to make a note previous to Laura speaking there that when we had received this packet to go with our agenda, that this is the first time we're receiving this information. I just wanted that to be noted. It says agenda item H, but just wanted.
Okay, so for agenda item H, there's some letters that we received them within the last day or two here at the board, so yeah, I apologize. We didn't include them in the packet, we didn't have them at the time we put the packet together, as well as they're representing one side, and so typically we just put our material in the packet versus allowing people to present their own.
Do any committee members have any comments on that item? Any public comments? Moving on to the testing program update. Wendy.
Remember to turn it on. Good morning. The testing update starts on page 73. Testing division is responsible for developing and administering CSLB's 46 licensing and certification examinations at our 8 test centers. We schedule over 44,000 exams a year and test nearly every working day. All of CSLB's licensing examinations are based on a current occupational analysis, which provides a description of construction work performed by contractors in each of those trades. We keep all of the examinations updated on a 5 to 7 year cycle. The new C7 low voltage exam was released in December. Currently, we're working on 7 exams in the occupational analysis phase and 6 in the item bank development phase. That's it. Are there any questions?
Do any committee members have any comments? Any public comments? Okay. Moving on to agenda item F, review, discussion, and possible action regarding licensing reciprocity and with other states and the use of the National Association of State Contractors Licensing Agencies, NASCLA trade exams and trade exam waivers. The committee previously discussed this item at the November 2017 meeting and requested additional information. This item is one of the licensing committee's strategic objectives to review existing reciprocity agreements and how other states handle CSLB licensees. In November, the committee had a presentation from the Department of Consumer Affairs Office of Professional Examination Services, OPES, about the use of NASCLA's trade exams and trade exam waivers. OPES recommended that in considering reciprocity, CSLB should evaluate the difference in the scope of practice, examination content, format, passing scores, and passing rates. OPES further recommended that if CSLB does adopt the use of NASCLA general building exam, we should, 1, accept that the exams are not parallel, 2, maintain existing waiver regulations, 3, accept the NASCLA exam only for reciprocity, and 4, participate in the NASCLA occupational analysis process. The committee requested additional information specifically on how other states treat California licensees, any enforcement statistics, complaints on CSLB has received against reciprocity licensees, and feedback from contractor associations. CSLB currently has limited reciprocity with 3 states, Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. Laura, will you provide some of the statistical information on those reciprocity agreements?
Sure. To address one of the areas that the committee wanted additional information on, enforcement did research on our current licensees that have been licensed through reciprocity and the complaints that we've received against them, and found reciprocity licensees are approximately 40% less likely to receive a consumer complaint than all of our other licensees.
The staff recommendation is that the licensing committee direct staff to continue researching the experience requirements for general building licenses in Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Louisiana, North Carolina, and Oregon, and their willingness to waive a general building trade exam for a California licensee. Staff will report its findings at the April 2018 board meeting. Do any committee members have any comments?
I had one question for Laura. When you said there was 40% less likely to have a violation, what kind of numbers are you talking about?
So since 1998, we've had 818 licensees granted reciprocity. In the last 2 years, 25 of those licensees have had a complaint filed against them. 2 of those 25 resulted in a citation, and 1 of those 2 resulted in an accusation. And then there's 1 pending investigation. And then, so that, overall, for our licensing population, approximately 3%, I believe, receive a complaint every year. Is that accurate, David?
About 5%.
About 5%.
And how does that compare with our state, California state license?
So approximately 3% with reciprocity receive a complaint, and then of our total population, about 5% receive one.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Is there any?
I just noticed that Arkansas doesn't accept reciprocity from any state, so is that even an option for the board, or is that something is that in statute, or is that in regulation, or is that something that could be negotiated? Do you guys have any information on that?
So there is information in the packet that kind of summarizes how other states treat us. I don't recall offhand if that was by statute or regulation, so we'll provide more detail at the next board meeting. But then certainly that would be something we'd have to consider when deciding whether to move forward if they're not going to accept our licensees, because that's one of the conditions.
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, Nancy.
Laura, would it be possible for you to, sorry, I'm a visual person, so is it possible for you to kind of graph that out, like do these comparison in a chart? So
Sure,
that we
of the
can
other
see how
states?
they compare, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that for the next meeting.
That would be really helpful because, some of the different states have these different categories: commercial contractor, residential building contract. And, for us non-contractors, it's kind of difficult to kind of compare that to our license, general contractor A or B. So I don't know how you can do it. It seems like every state has different categories. For example, Georgia has residential light and residential heavy. It's really confusing.
Yeah, you do find as you research how other states license contractors, we're quite different from everyone else, and it's hard to, look for someone who's equivalent to California, or even from one state to the next, 'cause they all do it differently, and the majority of states don't license at the state level like California does.
So what are we trying to compare? What are we trying to find with this comparison here?
So we're trying to identify if these states that use the NASCLA General Building Exam, if the requirements are comparable to ours, and then if they would accept our licensees. And so if so, then do we want to extend reciprocity to those applicants by allowing us to accept the use of their NASCLA General Building Exam in place of taking our B exam?
Laura, one more question. Would they have to take a separate test for our legal side of it? You would give them a trade waiver, but on the legal side, would they have to test for that?
Right, they would still have to take the law exam.
So on the trade side, are we looking at the NASCLA exam to see it has the similar skill sets that are required in California? Or is that another part of your analysis?
So that was what we talked about at the November committee meeting. And I think staff determined that, or recommended that we did accept it. It's not necessarily equivalent, but that it was sufficient for California standards.
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. The staff recommendation is that the licensing committee direct staff to continue researching the experience. I think I said that already, right? Can I?
Yes.
I would make a motion to direct staff to check into Oregon only and not the others.
Okay.
So just for consideration, I mean, we talked about the North Carolina Dental Board case, and one of the reasons why this item was placed on the agenda was in response to that Supreme Court decision. So just consider the fact that you probably want to explore as many options as possible for reciprocity so you can avoid any allegations relating to the antitrust case.
Agreed. So we're going to go ahead with the original motion, which will be to explore all of the states mentioned, or?
Can't do that.
He's made a motion just to consider Oregon, but I wanted, for purposes of committee discussion, that you maybe want to consider the fact that you might want to have another motion that includes the other states, but the motion that's on the floor is just for Oregon right now.
And it was seconded.
There was a second.
Go ahead.
Doesn't it have to be voted on before you can make another motion?
Right, but that's what I'm putting out there for you to consider.
So we're going to go with your motion, and can we have a vote?
Okay.
Is there any public comment on the motion to consider Oregon only for reciprocity?
I just have a question. Oregon is already part of the overall study, right? Right?
Yes.
So why do we want to separate that out?
For me and for my motion, I feel that Oregon, because of the proximity to California, makes a lot more sense than our contractors would benefit, as well as their contractors benefiting with reciprocity between the two states. I see no benefit to California contractors in, Georgia and Louisiana, North Carolina. They're on the East Coast. What we have seen in California is a lot of these contractors coming, without saying in certain parts of the country, coming into our state, contracting without licensing, taking the money, cheating employees, and heading back to their home states. I see no benefit to us and to Californians by allowing some contractors from the East Coast. I've tried to collect money from specifically a Georgia contractor that was in California and had no ability to do that. I had no help from Georgia. I had no one to even talk to there. So I had a very bad experience with that.
Would then that hold true also for Arizona, though? Since they're the border states with California?
Proximity was a lot better. It was a lot easier for me to, to get there, to find the right person, to do those sort of things.
I have a question, mostly information about Oregon. You mentioned that. And the other states, I'm thinking about what we had last year, all these disasters in the last 2 or 3 years, and contractors usually float from one state to the next where the demand is, and a lot of time it leaves our state sort of weak on contractors. I don't know if they have a special rule that when under disaster they waive rules to come in and help us out or what. But if you do it just for Oregon, are we hurting ourselves if we need contractors to come in to help us build? That's all. And you know more about that than I do. So you can answer that.
I'm in California, and I see we have plenty of contractors and people that can do that. But we do have reciprocity with Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. And if we get reciprocity with Oregon, which is a very heavily licensed state, I think that would, cover us pretty well. The western United States is, because of the proximity of those states, I think that those contractors would be apt to go back and forth. I just don't see any benefit to our contractors from having some of these Deep South contractors coming to our state. I don't see us going there.
Madam Chair, may I add a friendly amendment to add Oregon to the list of recommendation?
It's on
The motion is
Oh,
just
and he wants to just do Oregon only.
Just Oregon only.
I think Christie has a comment.
But I just wanted to, kind of for your consideration, the idea for allowing this reciprocity is simply to get those people that typically would not be licensed, so you have jurisdiction over them. And so if they do something to a California consumer, there's recourse in this state, and you don't have to go to Georgia to do any kind of recourse. What would happen then is you would take your action, they would have a record, and maybe Georgia would be interested after that because you've got a track record, an investigative case that's been proven a violation in this state. That would be reported out to the licensing entity in the other state. So the benefit to having people that would come here, like they potentially already do, is that they would actually have a license that you could potentially have jurisdiction over them in this state. And that's what our goal is, to protect the consumers in this state. And I just would like to put that out there because that is typically why other boards in the department consider reciprocity with other states, because they're already coming to California for the work and the population here.
Thank you.
And along those same lines, those same contractors can come here with knowledge and skills and abilities and a background that they could take our test, and that would be just fine. And we don't need reciprocity if they want to move here or set up an office here and be a California contractor. Great. Take our test.
Christie? you had something?
Right, so just to follow up on that, the Supreme Court decision indicates that if you can make the determination, and you're correct, this is just to determine whether it's equivalent, it has to be the same or greater. If it's not the same or greater, you can't grant reciprocity under the statute. So if it's the same and you require them to take the test, then the problem is that you've set up a barrier that potentially could be considered problematic from an antitrust perspective. So I would just suggest to take a hard look at the facts and see if they're the same or greater. If they're not, then you shouldn't, because it wouldn't meet the statutory requirements for allowing reciprocity.
Can I ask one more question? We are considering Oregon, so we're moving along those paths. It's not illegal for us in any way or violation of interstate commerce to take these one at a time. Is that a correct statement?
That's true.
There you go.
Yes, Nancy.
So just so that I'm clear, right now, the direction is just to have staff do the research, bring us the information, and this to the committee here, and then this is going to go forward to the board. So it's not like there's a decision being made, it's just bringing the information forward, it's allowing us to show that we did look into these other groups, and keeping consumer protection as our main goal, considering the other information you're putting forth. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with that, but I think in the best interest, it might be best that we do bring this other information forward. We're not making like the major decision, it's just to bring that information forward, really, is what we're saying.
Correct. So again, the current motion is to look at reciprocity for the state of Oregon only. Can we get a roll call vote?
Marlo Richardson.
Before that, Board Member Simpson, I guess since it's already part of the motion to study Oregon as part of this whole packet of research, I still don't understand why you want to bring in Oregon a separate. Is it a different study you want for Oregon, or?
No, not at
Because
all.
it's part of this motion here that staff recommendation is.
No, my only, I wanted to do it one at a time instead of all these states, and let's see what happens. We already have it with Nevada and Utah and Arizona. I'm okay with bringing Oregon into the fold. I'm not ready to, so 7 other states have reciprocity with California.
So you're saying,
And Oregon is part of the study, yes.
yeah, but you want us to forget the staff recommendation and just do Oregon? Is that where you're coming from?
Correct. I just want to bring, the recommendation was for Oregon as well as these other states.
That's
I'm
right.
saying, why don't we just start with one and see how
I
that goes
got you.
forward?
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Roll call vote, please. Oh, any public comment? Okay.
Morning, Richard Markson. I think my clients would agree with Ms. Springer's recommendation that this is only a study. Staff has already committed a fair amount of work to look at the appropriateness of expanding the state's current reciprocity standard to other states. So I think the appropriate thing for the committee to do would be to let the full board consider the staff's report at a future meeting.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, roll call, please, Laura.
Marlo Richardson.
No.
Dave Diaz.
Yeah.
Pastor Herrera.
No.
Ed Lang.
Nay.
Frank Shetter.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
No.
4-3 with a no vote. Can I go back to the original motion? Thank you. So again, the original motion was the staff recommendation of the licensing committee direct staff to continue researching the experience requirements for general building licenses in Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Louisiana, North Carolina, and Oregon, and their willingness to waive a general building trade exam for the California licensee. Staff will report on its findings at the April 2018 board meeting. Can we get a motion?
No, move.
Thank you. Laura, roll call, please.
Marlo Richardson.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Aye.
Pastor Herrera.
Aye.
Ed Lang.
Aye.
Frank Shetter. Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Aye.
Motion has been approved. Any recommendations the committee approves today will be moved to the full board for action at the April board meeting. Moving on to agenda item G, review, discussion, and possible development of an arborist health and safety certification program. In August 2017, CSLB staff met with members of the tree care industry who expressed concerns with the current classification structure, accidents and fatalities, and prevailing wages. At the December 2017 board meeting, letters of support were received and testimony was provided by members of the tree care industry. The majority of public comment was centered on worker safety. The board referred this matter to the licensing committee for further review and discussion to determine if there is a need to create a new C specialty license for tree service. Since the board meeting, staff have had further discussions with members of the tree service industry on ways to address worker safety. Based on these discussions, staff is recommending development of a certification program instead of creating a new C specialty license. Staff recommendation is that the licensing committee recommend to the full board directing CSLB staff to meet with representatives from the California Occupational Safety and Health to develop an arborist health and safety certification program, and in the interim, hold informational meetings with various stakeholders. Is there any committee comments?
Marlo?
Yes.
To staff or whoever's coming up with this recommendation, the certification, so that, would this be something that the employee or whatever would have on them at the time when they're cutting a tree down, or how would that work? It would be the same as like the C10, the electrical certification?
That's a good question. I think the details would have to be worked out. I think when we made the staff recommendation, we envisioned it sort of working like the asbestos certification or the hazardous certification. It's something any licensee can apply for, pass the exam, and apply to their license. So it's going to be only on the licensee. It's not going to be like the C10 where the employees need to be certified.
In my previous life, when I was going through high school, I worked in the summer doing this, and I would want the employees to be certified, honestly, if they're going to be up in a tree, because it's a very, very dangerous job, and that's just my opinion, so.
I think that's a good point. Unfortunately, CSLB itself, we don't have jurisdiction over the employees, and so the electrical certification was done, separate from CSLB, and requires a state agency partnering. In that case, it's DLSC, so.
Okay, then I make the motion for the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Does any member? I'm sorry. Is there any member of the public that has comment?
Question. Did you make this recommendation with the association?
Mike.
I'm sorry. Did you vet this recommendation with the association versus, I guess they were, last time we heard them, they were wanting to have a license versus
Right.
certification?
We did not, but I think some of them are here today.
Well, actually, I did speak to Pat Mahoney, so I did talk to Pat about it.
Yeah, so the problem that right now, the problem that exists right now in the tree industry is we have a lot of people out there, including demolition, landscape maintenance contractors, that are allowed to perform tree maintenance without any experience in the tree maintenance business. So they can take if you pass the tree license, you have to show that you have 4 years' experience working in the tree industry. If you become a C27 landscape contractor, you don't have to have any tree experience running a tree business. And running a tree business, being a tree trimming contractor, like you said, is very dangerous. So we're seeing the rate of accidents off the chart. Let me go back. My name's Pat Mahoney, President of West Coast Arborists, nearly 1,000 employees working for public agencies. We're a union signatory with the LIUNA Labor Union. But what happens, the workers' comp rates are extremely high. It's a real unfair playing field because you have landscape C27 licensed contractors can do the same work, pay a 25% of the workers' comp, and they're putting guys up in trees. They have no experience. Some of them do, but most, a good part don't. The employees don't have any, and they're getting hurt, causing our rates to skyrocket with the workers' comp. So we like the certification for the company thing that you're talking about. We'd like to work with you towards making that a good program. I don't know if you could continue with both of them to have, somewhere down the road to have not a limited specialty license like the D49 is now, but a regular C license for tree maintenance down the road. I know it takes 3 to 4 years. So that somebody that passes that at least has to say, I've been in the tree business for 4 years. Right now, you've got guys doing this work that haven't been. So if we could do both, would be great. If we just, if we end up with just a certification for the people doing that type work, is fantastic. But we think we really need, down the road, need both of them, because we continue, the landscape contractors see this as an avenue to make an unfair, they can do the work, pay less prevailing wage, less insurance, and qualify. So I thank you, look forward to working, the association and myself and our company working with you on the program.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment?
Good morning, Board. Thank you for having me today. My name is Sean Lopez. I spoke at the last meeting as well, and I've been attending these pretty regularly. I'm an investigator in Southern California for the craft of tree maintenance, tree trimming, line clearance, things of that nature. I would like to show my support for a new C license. I do think a certification for a company is a good step, but I would like to push for an official license just for tree maintenance. For these reasons. I've noticed a lot of, agencies, cities, counties, and C27 landscape licenses and contractors. They're able to essentially hide tree work within large public works projects. The way they're doing this, the C27 contractor and the agency, they know they can, do tree work, and so can companies like West Coast Arborists and other, tree specialty contractors. They can all do the same work. However, when a C27 landscape company comes in, offers a much lower price for tree work, they're winning all the bids. And the same guys that are, mowing your lawn and, trimming your hedges and picking up garbage are the same guys going up in palm trees 100 feet in the air. What I noticed from investigating landscape companies and tree maintenance companies, a lot of these companies, if you look at their workers' comp history, safety, of course, every year, every 2 years, they're switching companies. The reason why they're switching companies is because they will have an accident. Their workers are classified as landscape maintenance. The insurance company finds out it was a tree accident. They drop their policy, and they just bounce from company to company. That's what I'm seeing. I think it was a very good step to investigate and target tree licenses. And you guys found a lot of success and a lot of violations. What I would suggest would be to target some of the C27 license holders. They're the ones that I'm seeing the issues with. C27 landscapers, they can bid the work, and they do bid the work. When I look into those companies, I find a lot of tree work and no tree maintenance workers, no certified workers, nothing. I think there would also be a lot of success if we targeted the C27s. What this would do, it would set a standard in the industry. There's only a handful of C27 landscape licenses, contractors that do large public works projects. These are 3 to 10 to 16-year projects for agencies. Once we, find 1 or 2 and make an example of them, that would, significantly clear up the industry. That's what I've found just by spreading your good graces, your good words, your important notices that you're putting out, the clarifications. Those are helping the tree industry tremendously. If we can do that and kind of target the landscape maintenance industry as well, that will help divide the trees and the landscape and the specialty labor that does come with tree maintenance. And lastly, my organization, the Center for Contract Compliance, we have tremendous amount of data on multiple contractors, crafts, licenses. We can make your jobs a lot easier, especially when it comes to enforcement. And, we would love to share that information with you so we could work together and save some of your data collection time. We have a lot of it. We have systems that we can share with you that will show you a targeted contractor that's got violations for the last 5, 10, 15 years.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up.
Thank you.
I would just differentiate between the lawn maintenance folks and trim hedging folks who are exempt from licensure, and then the C27 licensees who demonstrate 4 years of experience in structural land maintenance or structural alterations to outside lands.
Thank you. Hold on.
Did my motion ever get seconded? No. Okay. I will, just to do staff recommendation, but I actually want to amend it, but if it never got seconded, I don't even have to worry about it. I can amend it. I just want to, instead of saying down here, in the interim, hold informational meetings with various stakeholders, I think we should add to pursue possibility of a separate license.
Second.
There.
Or have both, like to look into the certification and
Well, no, sorry, through the chair, but yeah, the certification still go there, but then continue to pursue the license, because like I said, I worked in the industry, and it is a very dangerous industry, and I don't want somebody that just, is trimming a bush one day, going up into a 100-foot tree and start cutting on it or trimming it, and so that's the issue, and I take it a little bit personally that way, just because I worked in it, so.
Thank you, David. Public comment?
Yes, my name's Larry Abernathy. I'm with the Davy Tree Company, Davy Tree Surgery Company, and we hold both licenses, both landscaping and tree services. I've been with the company since 1969, so I got about 49 years in the industry, and I totally support your motion, my company will support that progressing to a C. And so, as a matter of fact, some of us in the industry have been talking. We were kind of, the certificate or certification was kind of, I think, a good approach. So I may be getting ahead of the pack here a little bit, but I actually put together some ideas that you might want to consider as just brainstorming, like a starting point. So what I was thinking was, it's sort of similar to some apprentice programs where you have to earn a certain number of points and get them done. I would suggest that there's a lot of good industry organizations in the tree industry. There's the International Society of Arboriculture, ISA. There's the Tree Care Industry, TCIA. They both educate you in how to properly prune trees and how to work safely. So with that, I would just like to submit some ideas that would be good for a certification for the owner or the applicant that would be the RME, at least the minimum. And so I classified it in, like points earned for the education, the safety, and their tree work experience. So with that, I'd just like to submit it, and yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Right now.
Thank you.
Nancy, another committee comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. A point of clarification maybe. So is the motion necessary? Because the board already made the recommendation to look into the licensing back in December.
I thought it was referred to committee for discussion. Am I incorrect?
Yeah, the board referred to the committee to kind of further explore the issue, and the staff recommendation was the certification as an alternative to creating a C license. It wasn't the intention to do both, but certainly we'll do whatever the committee directs.
I just want to make sure we're...
So did we get a second for,
We do
I'm
have
sorry.
second.
Hi, real quick. My name is Sandra Jardy. I'm the Executive Director for the California Landscape Contractors Association, otherwise known as the C27s. First, I want to bring up some very important differentiations, the first of which Michael Janetsky made for us, which is there's a vast differentiation between some of the businesses that you see going out and doing some weed abatement. We reference it sometimes in the industry. You hear the vernacular of mow, blow, and go. Mow, blow, and go. The people that you see twice a month coming onto a property, they tend to it and they move on. The C27 Landscape Contractors License is exactly that. It is a solid, expansive contractor's license. Outdoor kitchens, irrigation, plumbing, and yes, some tree work with a caveat. That tree work has to be taken care of at 15 feet or less. Now, many of our members do also hold the tree service designation, otherwise, as you know it, as the C61/D49, including some very large companies that operate on projects that you would very much recognize: Google, Facebook, Beverly Hills Hotel, etc. We suggest that the committee move forward with the staff recommendation. There is a lot of things that we want to see happen in this regard, and the very first one is exactly that: worker safety. Nobody should have to become injured or die because they were maintaining a tree, whether that's 10 feet up, 20 feet up, or 100 feet up in the air. By and large, some of the citations that we had seen relative to the concerns in this regard have administrative remedies through other agencies. Nobody should be fudging on their workers' compensation quotes. Part of the challenge that I know a lot of our C27s have with workers' compensation is the fact that one of the largest insurers left the marketplace because of their own concerns relative to tree work. To take this even to further, it's not just the contractor that has an issue if they didn't properly disclose the amount of tree workers that they have on their crew and an incident occurs. But if there's enough claims, the actual underwriting company stops working with the agency and brokers that sold those policies. We've seen that started to happen in the marketplace. We have multiple remedies. If you fudge on your workers' comp and you're caught, Department of Insurance and the local district attorney's office are more than happy to take those pieces up, and they have. Relative to doing public works projects and fudging and letting people do things that are out of their classification, there was a memo at the end of October clarifying from the Department of Industrial Relations about exactly that issue. We want safety. We think it's imperative. It's imperative not just for the workers, it's imperative for the projects that they work on. And we definitely recommend that this committee move forward with looking at this certification efforts, and we definitely look forward to being involved in addition with other stakeholders like ISA, TCIA, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we go forward with the motion, or do I need to repeat it?
To be clear, the motion is stating that we're doing both. We're looking into the licensing, possible additional licensing, a new license, and also the safety certification program.
Correct. Yes.
I just want to clarify that this is just to explore the idea. You can't actually do it until you've made regulatory or statutory changes, which requires further implementation. A minimum time frame for regulatory change right now is about 2 years. So this would not be a motion to implement those new licenses or classifications or certifications. It's simply to explore, take informational hearings and workshops on it, and further develop a concept that, the board could maybe look at in the future.
Thank you. Go with the vote, please.
Marla Richardson,
Aye.
Dave Diaz,
Aye.
Pastor Herrera,
Aye.
Ed Lang,
Aye.
Frank Shetter, Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Aye.
Motion approved. Moving to agenda item H, review, discussion, and possible action on license classification authorized to install energy storage systems. We're going to page 93. Over the last year, the electrical industry has raised concerns about classifications other than electrical installing energy storage systems. There are currently several classifications that can install these systems depending on the specific circumstances. Letters received from the National Electrical Contractors Association, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, the Coalition of California Utility Employees, and the Electrical Safety Foundation International have been provided to committee members and are available at the sign-in table over there in the back. Again, just to repeat what Board Member Nancy Springer said earlier, we did not receive these prior to today, so we have not personally been able to review the letters. The staff recommendation is that the licensing committee direct staff to conduct public meetings to determine if the A, general engineering, B, general building, C4, boiler, hot water heating and steam fitting, C10, electrical, C20, warm air heating, ventilating and air conditioning, C36, plumbing, C46, solar, and C53, swimming pool classification should be precluded from installing an energy storage system in a standalone contract or when included in the installation of a solar system. After the public or work group meetings conclude, staff will report any findings to the full board to determine if policy, regulatory, or statutory changes are needed. Are there any committee member comments?
Can I make a motion now, or do you want to wait a comment?
Let's see if there's any public comments. Any public comments?
Hello again, Bernadette Del Curo, Executive Director of the California Solar and Storage Association. I mentioned that I would give you a little bit background on our name change. It's been about a year and a half in the making. It's not easy to change a 40-year-old organization's name, but we have done it, and it is simply a reflection of both our 40-year history, our current realities, and the future direction of the solar industry, which is to start. We've always been installing solar paired systems with storage. We currently do it today. In fact, over 70% of the storage systems that were installed through the state's self-generation incentive program through the PUC were installed by our membership. We have over 500 company members throughout the state of California. Over 250 are contractors. Over 100 of those contractors are C46 license holders. We represent the whole gamut of the industry up and down the state. And we have been and will continue to be installing solar PV systems paired with storage, as we have for over 30 years through the state licensing requirements. I actually have a number of member companies here today who can elaborate further on our comments about this motion. We look forward to participating with and speaking with the CSLB about this issue. I would like to actually ask if it's public information at the very beginning of the background, there's a mention of staff met with some electrical contractors in preparation for this whole agenda item. Is it possible to find out who that meeting was with and if any C46 contractors were part of the conversation?
Sure, I actually don't recall offhand, but I'd be happy to provide that as a follow-up to you. And then we can
that'd be
disclose
great.
it at the next meeting.
You know, if staff are interested, we would love to be able to have equal time to explore this issue a little more deeply before some formal public process. I brought some annual reports that just elaborate a little bit further about our association. I actually have a couple of questions for Wendy Balvance, if she's available to answer them about the licensing and the testing requirements. If that's possible, Wendy? Thank you. So Wendy, thank you so much. The motion, it looks like, or the topic covers a number of licenses, but the background information really just is about the C46 and the C10. I'm wondering if you can just elaborate a little bit for us which of those two licenses most consistently has the most number of questions related to, on the test, related to solar and storage.
Can you disclose that kind of information, or is that confidential about how many questions relate to what issues on the test?
It is absolutely public information.
Okay.
It's
I
in
just
our
wanna check.
validation reports. The main part of the validation report is, it's a summary of the occupational analysis, so we are required to do that. It is totally public information.
Thank you.
Good to check. We have current occupational analyses for both trades, and the C46 solar trade, because of its scope, covers a great deal of photovoltaic, and part of that is energy storage. And when we go back in our validation reports over the decades, we see that energy storage was part of the solar industry, the solar exam for all these many years. I do only have documentation through 2002, but it only started being in the electrical occupational analysis and then on the electrical exam starting in, I have this data, 2008, I believe, because the solar industry covers, all the questions are covering thermal and photovoltaic. It used to be mainly thermal, and over the years, photovoltaic has grown and grown and grown. So the exam as it stands now, there are 13 questions on the 100-item exam that particularly pertain to thermal. All the rest is photovoltaic friendly, and a good portion of those, at least 7 on every version of the exam, has to be on energy storage. The C10 exam covers a huge range of electrical activities. A small portion of it is photovoltaic, a smaller portion of that is energy storage. From merely the occupational analysis point of view, energy storage is covered more by solar, and the exams that we give each day reflect that.
Thank you. One last question on this. How long has the C10 test covered solar storage, specifically solar PV and storage, for how many years? And as a kind of a result of
Point
the
of
answer?
order, Madam Chair. Are we using a CSLB agent to answer questions on public comment? Is that what this is?
Well, I mean, the public's allowed to ask anything related to the agenda, and things that are not on the agenda should be discussed outside the meeting. So I realize it relates to the motion that's on the table, so that's why I haven't said anything, but I think at some point, I thought there was a motion. Okay, I apologize, but relating to the classification question, the energy storage question, it is potentially related, but I do believe there's a 5-minute limit.
It is.
So,
And your question?
How long has the C10 license included questions related to solar and storage?
The C10 exam as it stands now does not have to have any energy storage questions on it. It might. There are photovoltaic questions on the exam. I believe it's 13, 10. But they do not have to cover energy storage. There are some questions in the bank that cover energy storage, but they're not forced on each exam version.
Okay. Thank you, Wendy.
I have a question. What are the basic requirements for a C46 license to stand for the test?
4 years journey level experience, just like any exam.
At what?
Pardon?
At what?
That would
What
be more of a licensing question.
I mean, it's 4 years of experience, the journeyman level, or within the trade described in the classification, which I think is in the background paper here. Bear with me. So a C46 contractor. Oh,
On page 94?
thank you.
Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Installs, modifies, maintains, and repairs thermal and photovoltaic solar energy systems. A licensee classified in this section shall not undertake or perform building or construction trades, crafts, or skills, except when required to install a thermal or photovoltaic solar energy system.
So you're saying someone who sets panels on a roof for 4 years is qualified to be a C46 contractor?
Me personally?
4 years of just setting panels on a roof is qualified to be
I can't speak
C46.
to the
Well, you've
breadth.
just said that.
I can't speak to the breadth of experience and how it is perceived in the licensing division.
That's how it's perceived.
Yes, Nancy.
I have a question. So you were talking about an occupational analysis on C40. When's the last time you did an occupational analysis on the C10?
The C10 is in the process right now. We've already begun it. Should come out this year in 2018.
Yes.
If I can make a recommendation, part of the recommendation is that we'd be holding some public workshops, which you all would be invited to, so I think it might be best to have that discussion in that forum. Just my recommendation.
I agree, and that's a part of the motion, so do we? Well, I'm asking for David to go ahead with your motion.
My motion's not going to be anything what the staff recommends.
Okay. Any more public comment?
Good morning. Tom Ensel on behalf of the California Utility Employees.
The members of the California Utility Employees, also known as CUE, represent employees of most of the electric utilities in California, both public and private. And I'm here today to join in support of the letters submitted by all three of the California investor-owned electric utilities, PG&E, SDG&E, and SCE, to support action by the CSLB to clarify that C46 solar contractors are not authorized to install energy storage systems. This is an urgent issue for the utilities and the utility employees because a CSLB staff person recently stated in a letter to the CPUC her interpretation that C46 contractors could perform this work. And this resulted in a change in CPUC policy on what contractors could perform energy storage work receiving utility incentives, including the SGIP utility incentives that were just referenced. I mean, a lot of CalCIA members get those incentives, but they only, up till this change last month, they could only get those if they were C10 contractors or A or B contractors. The utilities opposed this change and are asking the committee to provide clarification today. The scope of work allowed to be performed by a specific contractor classification is not set by the test. It's set by state statute and by the CSLB regulations. And where those regulations are unclear, it's up to the licensing committee to provide its interpretation. Section 832.46 of the Title 16 expressly states that C46 contractors shall not undertake or perform building or construction trades or crafts or skills except when required to install a thermal or photovoltaic solar energy system. That restriction is even more limited than the general restriction on the scope of specialty contractors, which limits the scope to work that is incidental or supplemental to the performance of the work. By adopting a more restrictive scope of work, the intent was clearly to keep the scope of C46 work narrow. Now, obviously, you know, there are questions on the test to do energy storage, but that's because, pertaining to energy storage, but that's because they need to connect at times to energy storage systems. But that doesn't mean they can install the system. They also need to know about roofing enough to connect rooftop solar panels to the roof without disturbing the integrity of the roof. But that doesn't mean they can install the roof itself. So just the fact that there are questions on the test pertaining to energy storage does not change the scope of the license. These systems, energy storage systems, are neither required to install PV energy systems, nor are they incidental to the installation of PV systems. They have unique functions and are subject to their own separate installation and safety standard and code requirements that must be followed. And they require different skills to install, and they pose unique safety risks that really shouldn't be underestimated. These systems are also, they're not cookie cutter. They vary widely in type, size, and technology. Technology is constantly changing. And these systems are not just a couple small batteries. You know, large commercial systems, some of these systems are now hitting the 10 to 20 megawatt level behind the meter here in California. These are essentially small utility scale systems. Under CSLB's staff interpretation, even these systems could be installed by C46 contractors as long as there's a solar component. Improperly installed energy storage systems pose a risk to workers, emergency responders, and the general public.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up.
Okay. Just to summarize.
Our time is up, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Another public comment?
Thank you very much. Pete Gregson, Advanced Power. Frank, I'd like to address your question about C46 doing roof installs. Oh, I'm sorry. I kind of mumbled, so I'll try to be better. Absolutely not. I hope that clarifies that. So let's look at how we talk about energy storage. That's a new word all of a sudden. Energy storage, I think we can say, can be many, many facets, and you can look at hydrogen as energy storage. But we as C46s have had solar-powered electrolyzers for 20 years. You can look at compressed gas as energy storage. We have solar-powered compressors. We do lots of solar-powered pond irrigation with compressors. You can look at pumping water systems up a hill to bring the water down during peak times. We have solar water pumps that can produce water over 60 gallons a minute. When you want to look at an energy storage system based on batteries, look at 690. We're one of the only trades that specifically say we do battery installations. When it comes to battery systems, we're the ones who invented it. And the issue nowadays is everybody thinks all we do is grid tie systems. That's a crock. What I look at is what you call off-grid systems, I call primary power systems. We have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of primary power systems in California that don't have utility power. We've installed these systems for over 40 years. I've done islands for the Army. That's first time since World War II they can cut the generator off. I think the issue comes down to two, the primary power system versus the backup power system. When you look at the difference of C10s and C46s, we do primary power systems. When you look at C10s, they do backup power systems. They do incidental power systems for the phase shift to get the automatic generator to start. I put in systems that use inverters that are designed primarily for the nuclear power industry, for refineries. I'm the only one who uses those inverters with lithium-ion battery banks. There's tens of hundreds of these inverters in the world protecting nuclear power plants. But I'm the only one in the world using those inverters with lithium-ion battery banks on primary power system, and we're running, yes, utility companies, we're running villages. And why can't we do that? Because the utility companies know where we're going. We're turning them off. And if you don't allow us as contractors, and you start labeling us as we don't know what we're doing, people like me are going to fight you. And we're going to fight you in court. Because we do know what we're doing. This is the same game that was played a few years ago that you all are aware of when the and you can see I'm getting agitated. When the C10 started complaining about we're a bunch of idiots and we need to hire C10s to do the point of common coupling. When in fact the rules at that time demanded that we change the service interest of any commercial application. And then the roofers jumped on board because we were too dumb to do roofs.
Sir, your time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Additional public comment.
Madam Chair, members, Eddie Bernacki on behalf of the National Electrical Contractors Association. I want to first thank the registrar, the board, and staff for bringing this forward. This is an issue that we've been looking forward to getting some clarity on for over 2.5 years. NECA represents, our members are both C46 contractors, C10 contractors. In many cases, those contractors carry both licenses. You know, it's been our long-standing belief when we read the clear reading of the regulation that it is very limited, that it limits the C46 contractor to thermal and photovoltaic installations. If you read that, it says, a solar contractor installs, modifies, maintains, repairs thermal and photovoltaic solar energy systems. A license classified in this section shall not undertake or perform building or construction trades, crafts, or skills except when required to install a thermal photovoltaic solar energy system. An energy system is not required to install a photovoltaic solar system. Energy storage systems are clearly separate systems. They can be paired with the PV system. They can also be paired with other energy generation systems, wind, biomass, or connected directly to the grid. So that's why our members, when they do both PV solar installations and battery energy storage systems, they carry a C10 license because that license ensures that you have the proper knowledge and expertise in electrical theory and a background on the National Electrical Code and the fire codes to properly install those systems. So the board has clearly put out their opinion that a C46 contractor cannot install an energy storage system as a standalone system. But they've put out conflicting interpretations of that the C46 can install those systems when being paired with a photovoltaic system. We were looking for clarity, and we think it's important to get that. The charge of the board obviously is to protect consumers. It's also to provide regulatory clarity to the licensees, and we would urge this committee to make a determination. I'll just close with this and leave you with this. There is nothing prohibiting a C46 licensee who wants to install energy storage systems from obtaining a C10 license and showing that they're qualified to perform that work. So I'll leave with those comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional public comment.
Richard Markson for Western Electrical Contractors Association. We support the staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members, Mike Monaghan on behalf of the California State Association of Electrical Workers. First of all, I'd like to align my remarks with Mr. Enslow representing the utility employees and Mr. Bernacchi representing the electrical contractors. As energy storage systems evolve, and it's been going on for a lot of years, but it's certainly evolving now. It's getting more and more into our electrical solutions. It seems pretty obvious to me, and certainly supported by the utilities and their letters that they sent in this week, that there are safety issues involved with energy storage systems. There are risks and hazards that need to be addressed. And as these systems more and more are being interconnected with the IOU's distribution system, it seems obvious to me, on behalf of my electrical workers, that they should be done by C10 contractors using electricians. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Janine Cotter. I'm a C46 contractor based in San Francisco. We started actually with electrical storage as part of the PV systems, as one of the gentlemen noticed, and the growth of PV has predominantly been around grid-tied systems using the grid as a battery, essentially. And in Hawaii, where the growth of grid-tied systems has gotten a bigger part of the electrical distribution, it is now required to have a battery in order to install a solar system. That is a requirement because you're not allowed to export. And that's where we're going in California. Now, C46 has always had storage. There is DC coupled storage, and on the DC side, that is an integrated one inverter with a solar electric system. There's AC coupled. There are, if the licensing committee were to take a decision on this today, as was recommended by the utility workers, that would have significant unintended consequences, because we have systems out there that are DC coupled. We have systems out there that are AC coupled, where they're part of and an integral part of a solar electric system. And under the consumer protection requirements that have been established for net energy metering, we as contractors are required to have a 10-year warranty. Now, if we're not allowed to maintain or control our systems that we have installed, or protect the work that we have done because somebody else gets to come in and work on those systems, how are we to protect the consumer, and how are we to protect our work? And I think that that's something that should be studied before we make a rash decision. So, thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Hello, my name is Gary Gerber. I'm a C46 as well as a B license contractor. I've been a B license since 1976, 326203. I want to add to what Janina's been talking about. I also want to clarify on the comment about, well, just C46 are just putting panels on the roof, and that's all we do. That couldn't be further from the truth. The majority of the systems that we installed starting from about 1998 through 2004 were all battery-based storage systems. That's all we did. It was all DC coupled. I have yet to find a C10 licensed contractor willing to even touch a DC coupled battery. They won't do it. They're not interested in it. Even today, on our PW work that we do throughout the state, when we approach the C10 licensees who are doing the electrical wiring for the building, the inside wiremen, they don't want to be outside. They want to be inside. They don't want to be on the roof. They don't want to touch the DC wiring at all in the solar system. So there's an admission by the C10s that we deal with day in and day out that they don't want that work and they're not qualified to do it. And they know it. They're not tested on it, as has been already talked about. We had extensive testing in the C46 for the entire time it's been in existence. So the C46s are the ones that have actually been trained and tested in the use of storage, battery storage. And just wanted to make sure that that was very clear. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Ted Bavin. I've been a licensed C46 for 31 years. And the idea that somebody puts panels on a roof for 4 years and they are a C46 is ridiculous. They have to have supervisory work for the entire jobs and must pass a test. I mean, that goes without saying. And it's clear from Wendy's testimony that C46s have had more experience and more questions on the test the entire time it's existed. When I took my license in '86, there were questions on battery storage because those are the kind of jobs we were doing back then, off-grid battery storage systems. We've been the ones developing the battery storage industry, the backup power, back in the 70s and 80s with off-grid systems and continuing through the 90s until recently with backup power systems. Thousands of battery systems have been installed, all by C46s. Why now do these entities want to remove C46s? Clearly, suddenly they see, either they see that there's jobs to be had, or they are the traditional enemies of the solar industry wanting to slow it down. You know, look at who the letters are from. This is what I see. Some may be misinformed on the high level of experience of solar contractors, but that's what I see. I think C46s are far more qualified than C10s. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Brown. I'm 572240. Been a C46 contractor, owner of companies and all the largest companies, and been involved with all the largest companies in the United States and in Canada. Love the comment, Frank. So I think you can even install this. This is a battery system. Okay, there's a half of a kilowatt hour, plug and play, and that's what all the UL listed products pretty much come today. Back when we first started doing this, we'd buy the big old WeatherGuard tubs and put batteries in them. We don't do that anymore. So they're all you know, approved systems. I'm with JLM Energy Systems. We do anywhere from a half of a kilowatt hour to a megawatt systems. They all the same conductors that plug to those. The other end connects to our inverters. So everything we're already doing. I have over, you know, probably 7,000 to 9,000 installations between, you know, PV, pool solar, hot water, everything. And, you know, when I look at this, when I'm reading all this, you know, interesting talking points that have been passed around to all these places, it seems like the last couple of years of elections, you know, a lot of false narratives. So, I mean, the C46 is way more qualified, in our opinion, because we know construction. We have to build stuff. We have to know the codes. We do, you know, structures. We do everything. So, and in so we know plumbing, we know roofing, we know structure. What we know. You ever seen a Solar Heart unit? That was my family from 1981. So, and my own company. So that thing is, you know, 1,000 pounds. So we have to do all the bracing, and every one of those have electrical connected to them. So our whole point is you know, when we're looking at this and looking at the, you know, all these great letters that I'm reading here and the narratives that are used, there's so much falsehoods in there. It's just, you know, and over exaggerations. so of the industry, and, we would welcome, open discussion, more discussion about this, because this is, we've seen it before. They already mentioned it. Another gentleman from C46 side already mentioned it. This is a money grab. They're looking at a $4 billion industry over the next 12 years. Okay? This is a money grab, and they're just trying to take it. So, and it's not the first time they've tried to mess with our license. If anything, I would petition we work this out and change our C46, change the language, whatever we need to do, because by far we are the more experienced ones. So.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Harlan O'Day. I'm also a B general contractor and a C46 contractor, which I've been doing that since about 1979. And I would like to say that before anything else, I've been doing solar, specifically PV and off-grid with batteries. If you don't have batteries, there's no place to put the energy. You can't very well have photovoltaic solar power unless you have a place to put the energy. Unless the utility's there, that didn't become available until 1998 when it was approved for net metering. Prior to that, you could not couple with the utility, so everything was batteries. And still is a lot of batteries. I've done many systems that are battery powered because the utility company is so expensive to bring in power, rightfully so, over a long distance. Their only option is solar and batteries, unless they want to have a generator, which they always have, and then we interface with the generator, so you get that for backup if you need it. But since 1979, when I got started, radio repeater sites, cell sites, many types of things, along with residential and whatnot, have always been battery storage. And to this day, it's just been a new buzzword and thing a couple of years now. Since the Tesla, the typical system I would do just for a house is a minimum 24 kilowatts of battery storage, every single one. I've done thousands of them. And to give you an idea, the comparison, 24 kilowatts, a Tesla Powerwall is about 3 kilowatts. So, and you're going to need a lot more than one, but that's what's out there. A Sonnen battery system, they make them 2 to 8 kilowatts, a German manufacturer in the U.S. for battery storage. So there's lots of options out there, but to say there is no experience in this, I do remember back in 2005 at Solar Power 2005 in Washington, D.C., where we went to talk to lawmakers about starting the solar federal tax credit, 30% tax credit. Who was there was the IBEW International president who, when he was pounding on this thing here, this lectern, saying we will be in control of the photovoltaic market, whether you people out there, meaning us, like it or not. That was back in 2005. It took a long time for that to actually, where C10 started doing those kind of installations, many, many more years, but that was already 12 years ago. So to say that, we don't have the experience in it, we have lots of experience in it. Commercial, residential, doesn't matter. And I've done many systems that were in the city with 100 kilowatts of battery storage because the utility, even though it was 200 feet, still wanted $100,000 to get the power to them for whatever reason. And most people don't want to spend that kind of money just so they can pay them $200 to $500 or $1,000 a month. So the solar fixes their cost. So anyway, I would agree. Please don't make any hasty decision on this. And by the way, I have, for the last 25 years with Wendy Balfance, done at least 3 rewrites on the C46 to make it always relevant every 5 years as is required by you people. And we've done our best to do that. There is much on energy storage in it, always has been. And much on photovoltaics always has been. Solar hot water and all that has been kind of incidental for 20 years. And it's been PV mostly. So, I think that it would be a good thing.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is there any other public comment?
Shane Diller from the California Building Officials. We've examined this at the board level. At our board level, we have some concerns with the blending of the licenses. The clear regulations now call that C46s, when we're doing permitting, shouldn't be permitted to work beyond systems or exclusive of systems that are not related to the solar. And so just to come in to install the battery is a complication for us. We're pleased at this point that the only staff recommendation is to continue to examine this issue and to talk about it at this point. If there's some clarity in the language of the licensing that can be arrived at, that would help us. And then we're also going to go back and work and communicate with our members a little bit more to identify what issues this brings to local building departments, and we'll have a more formal position and response to you before this would move on to either further committee discussion or the full board. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I just got to make my motion. If it's done out there.
Is there additional public comment? Sure.
My name's Jim Jenner. I own Fusion Power Design. I'm a C46. Just a couple of things I wanted to say. Out in the field, the experience level with batteries is basically all C46. They've been doing this forever. Personally, I've had a lot of battery training, and I think what you're going to find, and all of the letters are over here, is a concern for safety. And that's always been the first concern with any battery training that I've had. So it's there. That's number one in battery training. The industry is heading towards combined systems of PV with storage, whether it's a 10 kilowatt battery, small residential stuff, all the way up to huge stuff, but it's heading that way. And clearly the C46 has the experience, and it's all headed towards making the grid stronger and more resilient, distributed energy. And sitting here, the idea that I had would be just to add a qualification to either a C10 or a C46 for storage. That way, it's not one or the other, and anybody that wants to do it can do it. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Hello, my name is Joe Nelson from Sustainable Energy Group. I just want to elaborate on the depth and understanding of the history of where our classification came from. And being as pre-1998, you couldn't even connect to the utilities, all of the evolution of where we've come from has been out of using storage of some sort. So it's absolutely critical that as we look forward, we understand that where we came from all already had this in our evolution, and that it was incredibly critical to what we do as a trade. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other public comment? Dave? Hold on, sorry.
We got one more.
Almost.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for this time to speak to you. My name is Bernie Kotlier, and I'm here as a member of the Board of Directors of the National Advanced Technology Battery Association. We are a trade association of manufacturers all over the United States, but California is the #1 state in terms of membership of NATBAT. And we are obviously very concerned about this issue as battery manufacturers and makers of storage, electrical storage equipment. NATBAT members place a very high priority on the safety of energy storage workers and the public. Most importantly, we don't want anyone injured or worse. We, as manufacturers, we do a lot of our own research on safety. We've also consulted extensively with building inspectors, with fire officials, and with electric utilities. We've seen the letters, and we've also had separate discussions with PG&E, with Edison, and with SDG&E. Our own positions and those of the organizations that we feel are the primary guarantors of safety in our state respectfully request that the committee make sure that energy storage installation is only done by well-qualified contractors who have deep and comprehensive knowledge and skills and experience in electrical theory and electrical code, and that contractors, the only contractors that do this work, are the ones who are licensed to install energy storage systems as standalone systems. Energy storage systems may be paired with PV, but they are completely separate and independent systems. I brought with you some photos that I would like to share with the committee, if I could. These are from the Department of Energy website, and you can look at them right now if you want to. They're there. And these photos of energy storage systems show examples such as the Los Alamitos Energy Storage Array, 400 megawatts in Long Beach, California. It is not connected, nor it is ancillary or in any way incidental to PV storage. This photo, the second photo, is from a UPS system, which is a backup system in Arizona. It's 12,500 kilovolt amperes. It is completely independent and separate system. The third picture is a storage system in Illinois, which, as you can see, is connected to wind. It's 31.5 megawatts. The bottom photo here is one of a storage system in Indiana, which is connected to a gas-fired power plant. Once again, completely separate and independent, having nothing to do with PV. Finally, I call your attention to the last two on these pages. One is a Duke Energy system that's 35 megawatts. That's connected to wind. That has nothing to do with PV. And finally, in Vernon, California, a 3.5 megawatt battery energy storage system that had two functions. One is to assure the continual operation of lead dust emission reduction systems, which is a backup system during power outage. And secondly, a system was used in peak shaving capacity, which a lot of energy storage systems are. So these systems are completely independent systems. They are not incidental or ancillary to any. They're complicated systems, they're dangerous systems, they require the highest degree of electrical theory, electrical experience, and we agree with all three of our electric utilities and with inspectors and building officials around the state that this work should only be done by those who are contractors who are licensed to install standalone systems, because that's what these are, independent and standalone systems. Finally, the last page is a picture of a personal protective suit that is used by electrical workers to work on energy storage devices. And when you look at this suit, you can see this tells you how dangerous this work is and how you must have the highest degree of electrical knowledge and experience and code to work on this. So we urge you very strongly to only approve this work for the contractors who can install it as standalone systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Hi, I'm Phil Tirrett, a C46 holder, and I really liked his speech. And I just want you to remember where it came from, where these systems evolved from. They evolved from off-grid PV systems that had battery support so people could live without the utility company providing their energy. They're not any different, they're just bigger. Instead of being charged by PV, they're charged by other sources, wind or the utility company. Still charging and discharging batteries, which began a lot with the solar industry and the C46. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other additional public comment? Dave or Nancy, who wants to go first?
Well, I want to make a motion. After hearing this, reading on this, and reading the California Code of Regulations, Title 16, all the other, Division 8, basically what I get out of this is that the storage systems are out of scope with the C46 contractor. So my recommendation because of that is to limit the C46 contractors to connecting to an electrical energy storage system, but not installing it. Because after what I've heard and read, it can get a lot more than just tying from a PV. It could actually be from what I understand and what I've read on these C46 contractors, it can get more, how do you want to say it? It can continue to grow without the CSLB having control of it, and I don't want that. So that's my take.
Can I just get clarification?
My motion
Can I just get
is-
clarification?
Yeah, my motion is to recommend to the full board that a C46 contractor can connect the PV system, photovoltaic, whatever you call it, system to the battery storage, but not, or electrical battery storage, but not to, not install an electrical battery storage system.
Okay, so
I seconded that.
just for clarification, whenever you want to modify the interpretation of a regulation, you should proceed through the rulemaking process, which is why the staff had recommended that you conduct hearings to get further information and make changes to the text of the language. Because currently, the C46 can install, modify, maintain, and repair a system. So they can modify a system. If the work includes modification of a system, either
But-
through storage or otherwise.
No, it actually
then-
says solar energy system.
Right, so solar, photovoltaic, photovoltaic solar energy system is what it says.
Mhm.
So if you want to further restrict the classification, then what I'd recommend you do is do the public hearings to develop the text to amend the language that I just read you. So that's what I would suggest going forward so that you can defend the interpretation. Does that make sense? You look like you're confused.
Just to continue with the discussion and what you just said, I just want to make sure we kind of clarify the difference between the great props that were brought in today, such as the small portable battery versus the very large system that would require a suit, so that we're all thinking about two very different types of energy storage.
Are we? We're not.
Can I make a comment now on the motion? I appreciate all the people that were here today to make their presentation and educate us on this whole process. As you can see, it's not a simple process. It's a very technical process and one I think we need to be educated more about, including the board. And I really think, in all due respect, Dave, that we need to, I think we have a recommendation by the staff to really proceed to look into this, to educate us a little bit more, to get all the facts, to hold public hearings. And if this is any indication of what this issue is in the community, and particularly in this industry, I think we owe it to the industry, whatever their classification may be, to let us hear what they have to say about the issue. I think we owe it to them. So that's why I believe that I support the staff recommendation to hold these hearings, to hold these meetings, so that we give an opportunity to all the vested interested parties to come and speak and let us know where they're going with this and how then we can make a decision on it. I think we're premature in making a recommendation in going forward with only one of the classifications. That's my comment.
Nancy? I would like to hear the committee
Yeah,
comments before
I'm
taking a
going to talk
vote.
for a little bit. Sorry, thank you. And Dave, I hear what you're saying, and I'm hearing what Pastor is saying as well, because I think we want to get that language, what it should read, because consumer protection is key for me. And as a building official, fire life safety for those consumers that come in and get applications is even more key as well. And so these off-grids, I deal with off-grid systems as well, and they're growing. These systems are not the same as they used to be. These commercial systems are huge. I think it was Mr. Kotler, and sorry if I say the name wrong, he made a lot of key points of what I'm concerned with, and that is that they're growing. I see with just even these little systems, some of the issues with just the basic residential ones were interconnection problems and the wrong feeder sizes. I can't even imagine what would happen with these huge commercial ones that are evolving every day. They're not what they used to be. I've seen where you have to use the special equipment, just even to go out and inspect them, we have to wear special equipment as well. We have to get training and safety before we can even enter the sites. I think it's extremely important that when we move forward with this, that we are taking in all the information from the industry, from everyone, and that we're having the right qualified contractor doing this, that they have the right expertise, the right experience, the right training, and holding the right license that we decide in the end that needs to be doing that. There's a lot more than just photovoltaic, and just putting the label of system on there, that's vague. So I think we may be, with your current motion, we may be locking ourselves into one specific thing. It might be best to go forward with, having those hearings and those meetings in here and everything to find out what we really needed to say. That's what I would say.
Yes.
Good. I think I don't think we're reinterpreting any laws. To the attorney's point, I don't think that we're making new regulations. I think that we are doing exactly what it states now of C46 is to install a solar system. Dave's motion was to allow that C46 to go ahead and connect to the battery system, not to install the battery system. So we're actually giving them something. If they've been installing these, excuse me, when you get control there.
You have the floor.
The C46 is a specialty contractor. There is nothing in our rules that would not allow a C46 to go get a C10 license and do it with electricians, do it with people who have actually, in California, have a California state certification to be an electrician and understand these systems. I support Dave's motion, and I'm ready to go forward with it at this time. Changing, I heard someone say we changed our name to, be ESS, Energy Storage System. I can call myself a doctor. It doesn't mean I'm qualified to do surgery on you. So I'm ready to go forward with the motion. That's what I have to say.
And Christie, this is one of the things I have an issue, I guess, what I look at and I'm a big proponent of energy efficiency and energy, renewable energy and all that. What happens if you got a windmill? Okay, that doesn't have anything to do with solar, correct? Okay, and then you got PV and you got a backup generator, all hook into this power battery. Who does it? I just don't want that scope to get bigger.
My point is, the fact that we have so much conflict over this regulation, to me, indicates the regulation should be re-examined and clarified, so there isn't conflict over what can and cannot be done with respect to installation or modification of a system. So that's where we can run into legal problems if we aren't clear and we attempt to enforce on someone who's doing that.
I totally understand that, but what happens if it takes 2 or 3 years and then we have some massive issues in that time?
Maybe you want to look through statutory change, that's faster sometimes, but, but my point is getting all the information, because this regulation, the first iteration was adopted in the 70s, and it's been changed 2 or 3 times since then. But as we've indicated, the industry changes over time, things change, and sometimes you need to re-examine your regulations to update them consistent with industry practice and public safety. So I think that providing additional detail, obviously there's some people here, but there may be others that want to provide input as to how that should look. This would be a great opportunity for you to update this regulation or seek legislative changes if you think it's necessary. But I'm worried that you don't have all the information, and you may not have the legal authority to proceed with interpretations that you may come up with at meetings. That's my concern.
So we have
Chair, can I make another comment?
Yes.
Christie, I think you really hit the nail on the head here. All industries, and particularly the solar industry, is dynamic, is changing. And I think that we have to understand that like I used to tell my staff, there's nothing constant but change itself. And this is a change in industry. And we have to kind of look at, this is an opportunity to review our regulations, our statutes, And the only way we can do that in a really professional, educated way is to have an opportunity to get educated and hold public hearings. And that's why I think it's really, at this point, not appropriate to move ahead and making a decision as your recommendation has proposed, Dave, in all due respect to your recommendation. So I really think it's incumbent to us to really move forward with the staff recommendation. And I guess we have each of a vote, so we can make that decision.
So would you like to restate your motion? All right, Laura, if you could restate the motion, please, for everyone.
I think I have it. Yeah. Recommend to full board C46 can connect to ESS but not to install an ESS. I'm sorry. Energy storage system ESS.
And you seconded, right? Okay, can we get a roll call?
Marla Richardson.
No.
Dave Diaz.
Yeah.
Pastor Herrera.
No.
Ed Lang.
No.
Frank Shetter.
Yes.
Johnny Simpson.
Yes.
Nancy Springer.
No.
Okay. 3-4, the motion fails.
I move that we move forward with the staff recommendation to hold public hearings.
Roll call vote, please. Is there any public comment to move forward with the staff recommendation to hold public hearings for additional information? Roll call, please.
Marla
Do we need a
Richardson.
second?
Yeah, we do.
Second.
Aye.
Marla Richardson, aye.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Yeah.
Pastor Herrera.
Aye.
Ed Lang.
Aye.
Frank Shetter. Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Aye.
Motion carries. We will now, move to I, review and discussion of possible action regarding the distribution of funds from the Construction Management Education Account. On to page 97. CSLB collects a voluntary contribution from applicants and licensees to fund CMEA, which is intended to provide grants to prepare graduates to fill positions in construction management. The CMEA 11-member advisory committee oversees the funds. CSLB last issued grants in fiscal year 2013 through 2014. At the December 2017 board meeting, the board authorized staff to begin the recruitment process of the advisory committee and to begin issuing grants in fiscal year 2018 to 2019. CSLB staff reached out to each identified organization and received their respective nomination. The list of nominees is provided on page 98 of your packet. The staff recommendation is that the licensing committee recommend to the full board approval of the list of nominees to serve on the 2018 through 2021 Construction Management Account Advisory Committee. Is there any committee members that have comments on this item? Any public comment? We have a motion for the staff recommendation.
Yes. A second.
Who made the motion?
Yeah, okay. I move.
Do we have a
To
second?
accept the staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Marla Richardson.
Aye.
Dave Diaz.
Yeah.
Pastor Herrera.
I abstain.
Ed Lang.
Yes.
Frank Shetter.
Yes.
Johnny Simpson. Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to Agenda Item J, 2016 through 2018 Strategic Plan Update, Discussion and Possible Action on 2017-2018 Licensing and Examination Objectives. Laura, please provide an update.
This chart is on page 101 of the packet. We have a few items where the target date has shifted, and we'll talk about them further. Item 1.3, we talked about previously on the agenda, reciprocity agreements. Item 1.4, we'll discuss at the April board meeting when we talk about strategic planning. And an update on item 1.1, this is in progress. It's an effort between licensing and public affairs, as well as IT.
Is there any committee member comment? Public comment? No changes, right? All right. No vote needed. The licensing committee meeting is now going to
Wait,
adjourn.
are we going to adjourn?
Comment?
What is the process for having the attorney removed from the board? What would be the process to have the attorney removed and replaced?
The board can make recommendations to chief counsel if you'd like someone to resolve it.
I'd like that to be at the next board.
Can I adjourn now?
We need a motion.
Motion to adjourn licensing.
No, it's his recommendation. You can just make a recommendation.
Motion?
Oh, to adjourn, motion, whatever.
We're going to say a second to that. Marla Richardson?
Aye.
Dave Diaz?
Yep.
Pastor? Herrera? Ed Lang?
Aye.
Frank Shetter? Johnny Simpson? Nancy Springer?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Licensing committee is now adjourned. Thank you.